All right, man. Well, this is great. My 5th episode finally. Yeah, 5th.
Nice.
Losing count over here. I'm excited to have you, man. For the listeners, Kawa Mawlayee.
Mawlayee.
Yeah, I got it right.
Yeah.
Okay. I think, like we mentioned earlier during dinner, I want to bring individuals who have really good stories and really good information for people out here, not just, how cool people shoot on TV and or on the internet or whatever. Like,
Right.
I genuinely think you have a really good story and a really good background that the listeners would love. So it's an honor to have you on as a guest.
Yeah, thank you, man. And thank you for those words. I think I have a unique story, right? And just because where I'm from and like the history there with how we're involved. So it all makes it very unique, but happy to be here, dude. I know we've been trying to do this for a minute. And
yeah.
So
I think the way it started was funny though, because I would like to let listeners know that we obviously met up in San Antonio at a Green Beret event, and it was
rock the Green Beret.
Yeah, we sat down, or we didn't sit down. We were back there smoking a cigar, waiting for this raffle for a staccato. And we were talking shit about who's gonna win it, and we were like, it's probably gonna be the one person that. And
your buddy bought how many tickets?
Like, I think he spent a couple $100.
That's crazy
on it. Yeah. And it was funny because when she won, we all were back there like 4 bitches complaining, like, why the fuck she win? And I remember I went to go try to ask her if she would sell it to me.
She definitely didn't look like a shooter, but she was very excited.
She was.
She didn't realize what she was getting.
She sold it though, right?
She did?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I tried to buy it.
She didn't exactly look like a shooter.
Yeah, she didn't really sell it to like a random. It was like the guy who was there with her, but it was because I tried when we were smoking a cigar. Night? Yeah, I went and tried to buy it from her. I was like, "Hey, I'll buy it." How much
did she sell it for?
She sell what we were talking about. $500.
What
is what she said? Yeah, and I was like, "That's why I don't know if you saw. I was over there fucking
that's
cursing a storm,
bro.
and they're probably like,
$500.
Yeah, they're like, "What's wrong with that guy?" But she
which
said
one
she only
was
bought
it? Was
one.
it the? I forget which one was it.
I think the
staccato was it
the
the L? No, what am I saying?
No,
the
what is it, C or whatever it is?
It was a CS.
Was it that one? Yeah, I don't remember exactly which one it was, but I mean, it was still a staccato. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and I think the tickets were like $20-$50, something, or 20 or $50, something like that.
$20.
Yeah, I only paid for one. She paid for one. She said too. I remember that.
Lucky.
But that was funny because I think that's where our conversation started, and we kind of started to know each other a little bit more, and we talked about the podcast and finally made it happen. Because I know you're busy as hell, man. So like.
Yeah, well, once you told me you're here in Houston, I was like, bro, too easy. Let's just pick a date.
Make it happen.
Yeah.
Well, before everything gets started, I wanted to give you a little gift. Got you a t-shirt, some stickers.
Thanks, man.
I know you like stickers.
How do we do this? Are you going to throw it?
Yeah, I'm going
to. There you go, man. Do we move our mics? Dude, thank you.
I think I kind of got the orientation of where the mic goes.
These stickers are on my gun case.
Yes. So that is another funny story. One of the guys who's actually sponsoring this podcast as well, Chris over at Team Room Tactical, he was one of our guests. He messaged me the other day when he saw your post on Instagram showing your gun case, and he's like, he actually wore or put our stickers up there. He's like, did you give him some more? Or like, and I was like, no, I guess those are the ones he kept that night, So,
yeah, no, those were the ones. Those were the ones. Like I said, I love stickers and patches. I collect them and I just throw them on everything.
Yeah.
I have so many bottles at home with stickers on them. I just kind of pick a different bottle every day. But I have my patch wall, which I need to kind of extend now.
Yeah.
You know how it is.
Yeah. I have a bunch just sitting in a box still.
I keep them. Yeah.
So I wanted to start with giving a brief introduction to the listeners about you. Because I think you've had a pretty interesting, I shouldn't just say career, life, right? It all started for you in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
You're born in Afghanistan. What year did you come here to the United States?
Yeah, so born in Afghanistan in 78, in Kabul. My family's from Kabul. And most of the Dari-speaking Afghans come from like a Tajik background.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the background that we come from. And so we spoke Dari, but my family's been in Kabul for generations. When the Soviets invaded in 79, we left to go to Pakistan like in 80 or something like that. And then we were there for a few months while our paperwork for the U.S. was being approved or pending. And then finally got to the States in 81.
Okay. So you're a little guy when you got here. So
I was 3.
Yeah. So you started off in Afghanistan, and then here, of course, in the U.S., you joined the Marine Corps. You were also in the Army. And obviously I'm not going to go into too much detail now because we'll talk about it as we go. But you've had a pretty interesting career. I mean, even Hollywood, I would say, because you were in some film. I know you advise for films as well, right?
Yeah, quite a bit.
So that's cool. Like I know for the funny thing is when I first met you in San Antonio, Chris tells me, he's like, yeah, that's Kawa. He was the guy that was like on that movie or whatever. And then I was like, so when I went back and rewatched it, I was like, oh no shit, that was him.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and you used your name on that movie too, right? Like,
Yeah,
that
Guy
was
Ritchie.
pretty cool.
Guy Ritchie was like, "What do you want your name to be?" And he picks all these like kind of weird British kind of nicknames for his guys.
Yeah.
Like the guys, if you listen to their nicknames in there,
Yeah.
like that's not what like actual SF guys would name.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the same nicknames. So I was like, I was stumped. I was like, I don't know, because I feel like it needs to match your British kind of sense of humor for their nicknames, like Jizzy and like, you know.
Yeah.
But so I was like, I don't know, sir. And then finally he was like, fuck it, Kawa, just put him as Kawa, put his last name on there. And I was like, all right, cool.
Yeah, all right, fuck it.
And then
I'll play
everybody was
myself.
like, dude, that's so rare that he did that for you, because that's like never happens. I was like, I've been consulting for a long time and I know that's kind of rare, but also it was just kind of cool to see your actual name under your character. You know?
Yeah, I think that's neat too, though. It's
Yeah.
like, you represent yourself on that film.
Yeah. I mean, I started as a consultant for that movie, but then there's that mine scene where we all,
Yeah.
and then they had that split team ops, right?
Yeah.
One high, one stay low. And
Yeah.
so I was like, well, who's the Overwatch? Like, we need somebody there to watch the roads.
What was it? A mortar that took you out, right? On that
Yeah.
film?
Yeah. He let me choose that.
Yeah.
He wanted to take me out with an RPG, and I was like, I got the high ground. Like the RPG is probably not going to hit me.
Yeah.
But I was like, a mortar will. And, these guys were shooting
Yeah.
so many mortars at us.
Yeah.
Eventually, they just bracket in, right?
Yeah, I remember. I was like,
Yeah.
damn, Kawa took a mortar, man. Fuck.
Sweet way to go.
Gone.
Sweet way to go. I told him, I was like, take me out the mortar.
At
He's
least
like,
you know it's quick.
Yeah, it was cool. Yeah. I'll show you like the BTS from that later.
That's cool, man. That's
How they
cool.
did the explosions. They did it like in 3 phases, just so they did one with me, the smaller one. Then they took me out, did a bigger one, and then they brought in the stunt guys and did like one more.
Oh, that's badass.
Yeah,
That's cool, man.
yeah.
That's neat. So we can get back into line and go through all that. No, sorry.
This is dangerous,
yeah,
bro.
right? Yeah, exactly. But so growing up in America, what was it like, man, as a kid? What was Kawa's life as a young guy growing up here in America? Where'd you start it all out here in America?
We went straight to Lincoln, Nebraska, because my oldest uncle at the time was going to one of the universities there in Omaha, I think, maybe Creighton, I forget. But he's the one that's like, hey, come here. It's like nice here. What do we know? But, so we ended up going to Lincoln, Nebraska. I grew up there all the way through college. But growing up in the Midwest as an Afghan, as a Muslim it was normal, man. Like I never had anybody be like, oh, you're Afghan or, oh, you're Muslim. Like not once growing up did that happen to me. And not that I can remember our family. So like the people from Nebraska and Lincoln took us in, and very like the most friendly people in the world. And to this day, I still say that Nebraskans are like the greatest, like the kindest and most purest like Americans in this country, just because I grew up there. So of course I'm a little biased, but man, also growing up there, not being one of them, like not being white, not being Christian, like, and then getting welcomed with open arms, and like also being helped a lot in all the programs that my family went through, just to kind of get caught up,
Yeah.
So it was amazing. And when I started learning that, I became very like patriotic at an early age. I was like, dude, I fucking love this country. Like, look how like they helped us out. Like I understood that from a young age. But once I got a little bit older, that's when I started becoming very patriotic and saying, dude, I love this country. Like, how do I pay back? How do I give back?
Yeah.
And my entire dad's side had been the Afghan military for ages. And then, but my mom's side were all bankers. And so then I was like, so that military, like that itch was inside me, bro. Like I wanted to join the military from an early age. And then my mom was like, no, go to college or I'll disown you. And then do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Just, that's how immigrant parents are. They just want you to do better than they did.
Correct.
And so I was like, okay, I'll do that for you. But then after that, I went to the Marine Corps. But growing up there was great. It wasn't till, nothing, being an Afghan, being a Muslim back in those days in the 80s and early 90s or through the 90s was nothing to even talk about, like no distinction. But then it was after 9/11 when everything kind of changed.
What were you doing during 9/11?
We had just got back from a PT run. We did a run, swim, run.
So you were already in the Marine Corps at the time.
Yeah.
What year did you join the Marine Corps?
What year?
Yeah.
2000.
2000. Oh, wow. You were,
Yeah, we did a MEU, came back from the MEU, And then that's when 9/11 happened.
31st or
31st.
31st, huh?
Yeah. Thailand. All that.
So you came back. So tell us a little bit what your day was like, 9/11.
Yeah, so we just got back from a run, and like I was married at the time, so I didn't have to I just showered at the barracks after that. I used my buddy's room. So I'm coming back from one room to the other through the catwalks, and like all these guys are gathered around the TV, and I like, obviously I'm like, what movie are you guys watching? And they're like, no, bro, this isn't a movie. Like, this is happening. And then that's when we all kind of just paid attention. And then it wasn't even at like the end of the day. That was the beginning of the day, obviously. But towards the end of the day, they're already like, hey, we're on standby. Like no one's going home because we don't know what's going on. We're waiting for word. So like we were on base till like 8, 9 p.m. I think that day, trying to figure out like what's going on. And now it's like, where are we going? Are we going to Afghanistan? Where are we going? And like Iraq wasn't really kind of a thing back then.
Yeah.
So everybody thought we were going to Afghanistan. So here we are for the next couple of months training everything like L-shaped ambushes, security patrols, anything that involved mountainous warfare. We were doing it, reactive contact in the woods, So, and we had the perfect terrain for it because I mean they're not the Hindu Kush mountains, but Camp Hilton hills
we talked about
steep.
that during dinner. Yeah. They build character, that's for sure.
Oh, for sure. Or they break you.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's how it was. And then, that's when I first started experiencing, and my family probably first started experiencing some of that kind of backlash rhetoric, for Muslims and stuff. And for me, it was like guys that I went through boot camp with, and then went through the School of Infantry with, and then came to the fleet together. Because you know how in the Marine Corps, we all just get dumped, right?
Yeah.
And so we were all dumped together into the fleet. And like, I knew these guys for a good, probably, 6, 8 months at that point, and we were tight. But then some of them started looking at me a little bit differently after 9/11. Like really, bro? Like, do you not remember all the times we laughed together and all that? So it is what it is. Most of the guys were cool with it. There were some weird moments, but there's only 2 dudes that I probably like didn't get along with. That there's 2 guys that I fought with, but then one of those guys I fought with, we're like best friends now, years later, and that was like 2001. And so that's just what it was, but it wasn't that bad. It was more so my family, and then more so just the general now kind of outlook towards Muslims, that you could feel that tension.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of a weird couple of years. Also, my birthday's 9/11.
Shit.
So there goes my birthday for a couple of years.
Yeah.
The next year I tried to celebrate it, and all my buddies were like, bro, really? Like, really?
I'm not laughing to be mean, but I'm
well, it is actually the first anniversary of 9/11, and I'm trying to celebrate my birthday. So
yeah, shit.
But it was all good, man. I mean, it was like, I'm not gonna force people to come hang out with me, but I just didn't celebrate my birthday for the next couple of years after that.
Today's episode is brought to you by Margarita, Texas. Now, if you're looking to make a perfect, delicious margarita, look no further than the Margarita Texas mix. This award-winning mix took second place one year, and the very next claimed the top spot at the Margarita and Salsa Festival in Waco, Texas. Not only that, but it also brought home a gold medal in a blind testing by the Beverage Testing Institute. It's not just a mix, it's a gold standard in flavor. People are calling it the best margarita mix they've ever tasted, and that's not hard to see why. Be sure to check them out on social media. If you see something that catches your eye, hit that like button, subscribe for more great updates from Margarita, Texas. Check them out on Instagram, guys, at Margarita, Texas. That Instagram will take you to their website and where you can purchase their mix. Check them out, guys. Awesome people, great mix. You're going to love it.
Until I got tired of it, and I said, fuck it. It's my birthday. I'm going to go,
And you bring up a very interesting point because, like, and I'm telling you from my perspective, and I told you this earlier, when I first joined the Marine Corps, I saw what 9/11 was. I was in school when it happened. And, went through all that. We joined the military, and we get this kind of mentality of like, and I'm not saying now, because I think now it's different, right? There's enough of us people who live through GWAT who have expressed what Muslim people are in this world, and that they're not all these animals that we all thought they were in the beginning. And that's where I think a lot of that, that hatred came from, right? And I'm embarrassed to say that, right? But, I think it wasn't for me until I finally got to actually experience that kind of world that I realized, dude, they're fucking great people. Like right now, I would tell you something right now. There's a girl that works at my job right now, and she's Palestinian. And I'm like, I would feel more comfortable going to her family's house right now than I would feel going to some of my other white friends' house. And not because I'm saying, you know, white people are extremists or none of
No.
that. But the way these people are, they'll give the shirt off their back to you.
Yeah.
They'll feed you. They're like, you know, it reminds me of the Hispanic culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, even if they're not family, you treat them like they're family. Right.
And it's very much ingrained in our cultures. And although Afghans are not technically Middle Eastern, we're technically Asian, but we still share, since we share the same religion, we also share a lot of that culture and traditions. Correct. So I completely understand Middle Eastern people, you know, to the T. And yeah, Palestinian people and most Middle Eastern people in general are very like honorable people, very just, you know, people that want to be left alone. But like when they have a guest, they treat you, they roll out the red carpet for you.
I spoke with a Palestinian gentleman a couple weeks ago, and he was telling me there was an area in Palestine. And he said there's basically a street where there's a lot of gold shops and stuff like that. And he said he went down to go visit, and he grew up here in America. And he said he tells all these shop owners, like, dude, you have gold, like right there next to this window. Like, you're not afraid somebody's going to break it? And they're like, no. Like, most people here are, you know, they're afraid to commit some kind of, like, that's just not who they are as people. Not because they think they're going to get, you know, like murdered or anything, but they just that's not how they were raised, to go and create havoc or steal or any of that stuff. And I think that's important to start, you know, showing the world, because, you know, we have this. And I'm not going to go too deep into it because we are later on when we talk about some other item or topics. But I think that's where we have to start showing the people here in America what it's really like over there, for people who have actually experienced it, especially you, because not only you've experienced the culture, because one, that's like your culture. You were raised in an Afghan family, but you've also deployed around the world. You've, you know, with the military in different capacities.
Well, fifth group was in fifth group's AO is the Middle East. Yeah. So like, we went to the Middle East a lot. Not just for war, but you know, training missions and joint exercises, and so that takes us over there quite a bit. And I wish people in America could go experience, you know, just the Middle East in general, because one, it's beautiful. Two, all of our history comes from there. Yeah. Most of it. And then once you're there, you're submersed in this culture, and you get to see these people for who they truly are, not who CNN or Fox shows you through their filters and lenses.
What's like Mexico? Everybody thinks they're all drug dealers and cartel and stuff.
Oh yeah. Like if you go to Mexico, you're gonna get killed and robbed.
They're great people.
Yeah.
They'll feed you. Yeah. They'll overfeed you. They'll give you beer. They'll have a party with you.
100%.
You know, they're just.
But that just goes to show, like, the way, you know, the way our minds and outlooks and mindsets are shaped is through mainstream media. Because who can afford to just go to the Middle East? Who can afford to just go to Mexico City? Right. You know, most people can't even afford fucking eggs these days. So like, but at the same time, they need to, because that is the only way to really understand the people that you think are a threat to you. Yeah. And in fact, at fifth group, we started a language submersion program where we would take Green Berets and we would find families in Nashville, Muslim families from different kind of Middle Eastern parts. And we would vet them and everything. And then we would ask them if our Green Beret could live with them for a certain number of time, if they're okay with it, right? Because obviously they have daughters and stuff. Yeah. There has to be a lot of respect towards that. But the families that said yes, those Green Berets went and lived with those people, and they were submersed not only in that language every day from the moment they woke up, but the culture, the ways, how they spend their days, you know? Yeah. And so that is the only way, dude. You can't do it through the media. Certainly don't do it through the media. Everything's a tale. But then also the internet's great for open source info, but you can't submerge yourself into the internet and like dip your hand in this bucket of water to feel what it is, for sure. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like there's no tangible element there. So that's the only way. But unfortunately, it's up to like people like you and I to use these kind of platforms to do our best to communicate and articulate what's in our minds and in our hearts to these people who have never probably even seen an Arab, bro. Like, you know, like there's parts of the Midwest where people do not know what an Arab is to this day. Because why? I mean, you know, they're so just detached from everything. Yeah. And it's not the right answer, but also it's not like we want to force it down their throats. Yeah. You know, but if they're going to talk about it, or if they feel like this is something they want to invest time and energy in, then understand it. Yeah. You have to truly understand it.
We live in a very fortunate country, man. We've been so spoiled and so catered to. Like, I mean, when the power went out here in Houston after that hurricane, how many people were acting like it was the end of the world?
Oh man. Yeah.
It was, and that just shows you like that was something that, I mean, you and I have experienced life without power for more than a couple weeks, right? And
Yeah.
it's just life. It goes on. You find a way. But we
Yeah,
have
you
ingrained
adapt.
our people here in America to have everything at their, you know, in basically like we said right now, phones and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And then they just forget how to do life, right? And I think, like you said, until you go and experience some of these things, your opinion, your thoughts, and your way of viewing things will, unless you truly actually use that phone or whatever to actually educate yourself. And
Yeah.
like we talked about it, right? The first two results on Google are usually the most bullshit ones because those are the sponsored ads. The rest is when
Yeah.
you start digging deeper is when you start finding the real stuff, you know? But yeah, man. So obviously not to go off on that rant just yet, but so you join the Marine Corps, you have this very interesting, you know, beginning because one, your birthday's on 9/11. It just happened. What happens as you're in the Marine Corps? Because obviously we know you went on the MEU before, you know,
Yeah, MEU was
9/11.
great. I mean, we were on a ship the whole time. We hit a bunch of different ports. For you guys that don't know what MEU is, it's a Marine Expeditionary Unit. Usually it's a couple battalion of Marines that go on a couple different Navy ships. And we end up training in an exercise called Cobra Gold, but then we also get to hit all these ports. So it's kind of a cool cruise, really. And then
Boat full of
you
trouble.
get different times at different ports. Like, you know, we got 3 days in Pohang, Korea, but then we got 2 weeks in Thailand. So it's like, you really want Marines in Thailand for 2 weeks? That's crazy. But it was a different time back then. Yeah, so did that. And then we came back, 9/11 happened. And then we finally found out that we're going to Iraq. And so we ended up going to Iraq. In fact, they gave the Horno Marines Afghanistan. They gave us Iraq. So then we started gearing up to go to Iraq. Training changed a little bit. Now going to an urban kind of more warfare application versus the mountainous, you know, and open terrains of Afghanistan. And so, but we didn't know much CQB. CQB was still pretty much a new concept to us because, like, who's doing CQB in 2000? You know,
You didn't have Instagram to go look at.
yeah, and there was no YouTube operators to go, you know,
go
emulate.
follow. Yeah.
And so, but we did so like such basic. I couldn't even tell you what we were doing, but we were getting inside. We were pouring inside that room and trying to flood it with, you know, men, but also fire superiority.
Mm.
And like then we quickly found out that that's not the right way to do things. Sometimes we need to prep it, you know. And it got so bad, like in Fallujah, for example, the second deployment, OF2, we were just clearing rooms by grenades at some places because like we knew there's absolutely nothing but bad guys in here.
I told somebody this before. I was like, before flashbangs, it was a freaking grenade going right through a door.
Yeah.
And then everybody goes.
Yeah. And then when it gets to flashbangs, you're pretty much eating that flashbang.
Yeah.
You want to get the jump on them.
Yeah.
And so that's what it turns into. But we didn't know all that high speed stuff back then.
Yeah.
You know, but here we are trying to do a little bit of urban warfare.
Yeah.
And
mind you were training for Afghanistan first.
We were.
Yeah.
We were training for Afghanistan.
Two different monsters.
Completely two different applications of warfare.
Yep.
Yeah. But so you know, Iraq, the OF1 happened just the same for everybody. We staged in Kuwait. And then finally got the word on March 15th of 2003 to push across the border. Or no, I think it was, yeah. So then March 15th, we pushed across the border. And then in like 2 days later, we get into our first firefight, which was like a big ambush by the Republican Guard, Iraqi Republican Guard, off to our left. And we were in the Amtraks, the amphibious assault vehicles. And, you know, it's tight in there. We're like sardines. But, you know, all of a sudden it's like tink, 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 tink. You know, you hear the bullets impacting on the outside. And, you know, they're calling the 3Ds, direction, distance, you know, description, and like, where are they at? It's an ambush, left side, berm, 300 meters, you know, and it's just like, they're just like lined up. Just AKs, RPKs, RPGs coming our way. So the ramps drop and everything was slow-mo, dude. Like in fact, before the ramps came down, we weren't even allowed to load a magazine in our M16s. And when I heard, like when they said, yeah, we're about to basically drop the ramp, they said, load up. My hand was shaking so bad that I couldn't get my magazine inside my AR.
How old were you at this time?
I was 22.
Young guy, man.
Yeah.
You start hearing bullets hitting the shit. And
yeah.
It's real now.
And I was a fire team leader. So I was in charge of 3 other Marines inside my, you know, with my squad leader and the other 2 fire teams. But so I'm scared because I'm like, we're all scared.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, training is one thing, you know, sim training is cool. You know, you do the Miles gear, which is gay, but like you get some some kind of effect out of that. But then it's different when bullets are coming at you, and then you see the impacts hitting your feet or around your feet. I mean, hitting the dirt, and you see these little dust clouds of, of dirt, like, right, and you're like, oh my God, dude, like that was real. Like that actually just missed me.
That could have killed me. Yeah.
And then you hear the snaps, right? Because like these bullets that are missing your head and they're hitting that, they're breaking that kind of that sound barrier, like right when they go past you and you hear that snap, you're hearing that for the first time and you're like, what was that? And you understand what's happening. And then everything's slow-mo. It was crazy. At least that first firefight for all of us where we kind of popped our cherries was.
How long was your firefight?
That one lasted, I want to say like 3 hours, because it started with them on the berms. We got online. Now we're doing like fire team rushes and like laying down, like, it's crazy, bro. It's like open battlefield, them on a berm, us in an open field with Amtracs with, the big guns behind us just opening up. And like, we're just caught in the crossfire trying to, and like, we're trying to like rush and this, like we finally get to these berms. And once we get up there, we see bodies of dead Iraqis, but then we also see them fleeing into this tall grass. It was like 10 feet tall, it was just tall. And like they disappear. And like we have cobras up above trying to give us like where they're at and how many roughly they're at or how many there are. And so we get to the other side of that berm on the downside, and all of a sudden I hear, fix bayonets. And I'm like, bro, what? I was like, is this real? Because, like fix bayonets, that's like something you hear from Vietnam, Korea, World War II. But yeah, they said fix bayonets, but it made sense because we were about to go into this really thick kind of foliage that's over our heads. And we had to stay online. And like, who knows, man? Like if the guy rushes out at you, your visibility was only about 4 to 6 feet.
Yeah.
It was all green. And
I think for people who don't understand the initial invasion in Iraq, like the last large level of conflict that the United States had prior to that was Vietnam. Like, yeah, we had, Desert Storm or whatever, but I'm not taking away from any of those guys. But I mean, conflict to that level was really Vietnam,
Yeah.
There was, everything else in between. There was stuff in between, but not massive like that.
No. Yeah, I agree.
So you're running into this tall grass.
Well, at first I have to fix my bayonet.
Yeah.
Because like I learned one time, like in basic, it's like now I'm like, and they're not even bayonets, they're like K-bars.
Yeah,
so like
K-bars.
now we're trying to hook up these K-bars, which didn't take long. I think I was just scared, so I'm just sitting there fidgeting with it. But then we have to stay online, and like every once in a while you hear a couple shots, that's and you can tell it's an AR, or an M16, not an AK. But you hear like, and somebody's shooting somebody somewhere in this field. And it was crazy, dude. By the end of the field, I forget how far this field was, but it was also really hot back then.
Yeah.
And one of our dudes passed out. In fact, he was in my fire team. And so when he kind of passed out, and like by then everything was safe, but we still had to get to the other side, because now once that was done and like all those, like that firefight was over, the Amtracs met us on the other side. So they went all the way around to flank to make sure there's no one else, and then they're like, okay, rendezvous on us. But then on the way there, we still had a couple more 100 more meters to go. And don't forget, we were in mob suits.
Oh, that's right. Because in the beginning, it was weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah.
They thought there was chemicals. Yeah.
And so like, we're doing that, and it was tough, man. Like, guys passed out. It was like the temperatures, not in March. In March, it was probably like 110, but like it got up to like 130, 140 during the hottest parts of that deployment.
For people who have never worn a mob suit, that's not fun.
You're in this plastic suit with a gas mask on, and then you're supposed to fight. So that's just what it was. But yeah, that was the first. And then we went all the way to Baghdad, fought all the way to Baghdad. In fact, we were moving to Baghdad so fast that our resupplies couldn't catch up to us. There was days where we went out without food and water. And our resupplies were actually getting ambushed because like there's pockets of, Republican Guard that are still, and so but we were told, go, like whoever gets in your way, fight them, but keep moving. And so it was just, we had to stay like in this big, like if you could zoom out on Iraq, I'm sure you could see all the formations kind of moving north, but that's just what it was. We were moving fast. So there's times where we had to go to people's homes and farms and kill chickens and turkeys and like steal their food, because that's just what it came down to. And if like at first we were like, well, we'll just leave them some cash, because it's like, bro, like they're coming back, like they didn't take off somewhere.
Yeah,
all their livestock still here.
Yeah,
you know. So I was like, just put some cash on the thing, and then let's take whatever we want. Let's get out of here. And we did, and that's kind of how we fed the entire company. Was just patrols would go out looking for enemy, but really looking for food and water. There was one time where I drank out of a bird feeder.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I drank out of a bird feeder, bro, because it was that hot. It was that I was that thirsty, and I saw this bird feeder, and it didn't look clean. I was just like, I don't even care anymore, because like I didn't get sick though, thank God.
Yeah, good.
We all got sick from bad chicken later down the road. Right before Baghdad, we all got like everybody got sick.
Yeah.
With like diarrhea, vomiting, everything, because like we didn't prepare that chicken. Somebody didn't prepare that chicken.
This episode is brought to you by Team Room Tactical. Team Room Tactical was founded by Green Beret veterans to honor the culture and history of our armed forces. At Team Room Tactical, they offer a premier Cerakote and laser engraving service. They specialize in elevating your firearms and an extensive array of products to new levels of personalization and sophistication. Their team of skilled individuals combine state-of-the-art technology with meticulous craftsmanship to bring your visions to life. Whether you're looking to add a unique touch to your firearms, enhance the aesthetic of your accessories, or create memorable gifts, they offer a tailored experience to meet your individual needs. From vibrant color schemes to intricate engravings, they take pride in delivering unparalleled quality and attention to detail. They transform ordinary items into extraordinary pieces that reflect your style and personality with their custom Cerakote and laser engraving services. Head on over to teamroomtactical.com and get your custom services done by these guys. Amazing dudes doing amazing things. Go check them out. teamroomtactical.com.
So
Correctly.
when you're pushing through Iraq, I mean, because we all, those of us who were, old enough to understand what was going on around that time, I remember I had a cousin, and when he was initial punching in, I remember my aunt was saying, like, the last time I talked to him, he's saying that, if we can send them anything that's like heavy and bulky to put on top of their Humvee and stuff, because there wasn't armored Humvees and stuff back then. Like there was
all light skin.
Yeah. And these soft tops are just getting torn up, man.
Yeah.
And, that's why I say GWAT is very unique, because we went through a whole like era of just testing things, learning new things. So like
while
recently,
using old things.
Yeah. Old things. And then figuring out what's going to work best.
Right.
So when I seen a Marine Corps infantry unit recently, with the fast helmets and all that cool stuff, I was like, what are those MARSOC guys? They're like, no, that's just infantry now. I'm like, oh shit. Like that's pretty
0311s
cool.
have come a long way, my friend.
A long way, man.
Since 2000.
I never thought, I was always like making fun of people that used to be like, oh, you guys got this now, even though we had the old school fucking flax that, with the Velcro that covered up. Yeah. And I think it was funny to see the new guys now, my nephew, he's in the Marine Corps now and he's a supply guy. And I tell him, like, is this really what you guys are issuing? Like just regular Marines? He's like, yeah. I was like,
nice.
Damn. Like, that's great though. Yeah, that's awesome.
That's how it should be. I know, like, during my time when we were in, we had such old school equipment. Like, our M16s were actually M16s, bro. Like, not even A4s.
Yeah.
We got A4s right before Fallujah.
Do you remember when Marines were wearing the old school desert uniform and then the new deserts, like in between?
Yeah.
There was not enough to go all the way through.
Yeah. I remember that. But we would see like Army guys in Iraq. They got like M4s and they got like these, way better gear than we did. And I was like, look at these motherfuckers, bro. Like, all bougie and shit.
Yeah.
And then we are with like our broomsticks and our like old school, like our LBV vests that go over the flak vests.
Yes.
You remember those?
Yes.
Yeah. So you have to wear that. And then I was a 203 gunner because I'm a fire team leader. So I also had a fucking grenade belt around me. And I mean, but we would see the Army guys, we'd be so jealous of what they had. But then we're like, bro, they're pussies. Like, we bring the fight. They don't.
Yeah.
That's just how it was though. But coming back from, we went, so like after Baghdad, we got reassigned to a Diwania. We went there, took over a college university, and then we just started doing presence patrols, security patrols, started doing like key leader engagements with the folk out in town, trying to help them with stuff. We got electricity up for the entire town there. So at that point, they loved us. Yeah. At first they were like, we don't want you here. But then we're like, let us help you. You help us by telling us where the bad guys are. Or like, if there's any other, kind of, well, even back then, a little bit of insurgency.
Yeah.
But then also, we'll help you guys out. When we got their city power back on, dude, it was game over. We had their hearts and minds.
I think I'm glad you bring that up on how you guys entered, how you interacted with the people.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, they didn't like you at first, but they grew on you a little bit because you also still gave them something, right? And like, we're currently seeing a problem in the Middle East where a nation that we're all told to support is just obliterating places. Like, I mean, I always say it, if they wanted to do it right, they would have walked into the Gaza Strip and they would have hunted down Hamas individually because they have the capabilities of doing so, going after them and rebuilding that place for the Palestinians if you want to win them over and create this. But we're going to get back into that soon. But that's something, I think some of the stuff we did as Americans too is not all the best. But that's the difference though, right? Like we took the fight to what we were told to go after, right?
Yeah.
Versus just taking out a whole block and bulldozing it,
Yeah. Yeah.
And you just mentioned
that's definitely one way of doing things, isn't it? So, but it depends on what your objective is. So
it's true. So your first tour in Iraq, it goes well. You come home. You end up going back. How long in between did you?
I think we were home for, I want to say maybe 6-7 months.
I was gonna say back then the turnarounds were quick.
Yeah, and I was also, so then at least most of those guys got to stay. I had to go to squad leader's course, so I went to infantry squad leader's course, which is about the same length as like Ranger school.
Yeah,
and really kind of same curriculum. And that's why I didn't go to Ranger school in SF, because they're like, you want to go to Ranger school? I was like, why would I want to do that again?
Yeah.
They're like, you never been. I was like, I did the Marine Corps version.
Yeah.
It's not as, it doesn't have the same prestige.
Yeah.
But it's basically the same skill sets, right? So but I went there, so I was gone, like I was home for a couple months shorter, and that, everybody else was at home. But then we went right back we knew we were going back to Iraq, and then we knew we were going to Fallujah, and we knew we were going after Zarqawi. It was called Operation Phantom Fury, and it was going to be a big operation, a big urban operation. In fact, the biggest one since Way City, Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it ended up being. And so we went there. I was a squad leader, got there. And I also just had, like, my kid was born just like a couple weeks prior to that. And so then I had to take off. And that was a whole different fight, man. That's what we were like, really understood what CQB was.
Yeah.
But we still weren't good at it. Like, cause who's going to teach us?
Yeah.
But we understood it now. We were like, okay, we got to like fix ourselves. Cause we lost a lot of guys. We thought we were hot shit, but there's a lot of bad stuff that happened. Like we didn't have the Abrams in the first week and a half. We didn't have Cobras in the first week and a half. And we were told that there was 600 Zarqawi fighters in Fallujah when there ended up being 1,800 Zarqawi fighters in Fallujah. And no one said anything about human shields. Those also existed.
Yeah. You're not fighting a uniformed military at that point.
No, this is a straight insurgency, dude. And like, these are people from all over the place, not just Iraq. And in fact, a minority of them are Iraqi. Yeah. The majority of the foreign fighters that came to use this as a playground. But that's what it was. And it was a lot of, learning how to now not just clear structures, but also how to get from building to building, how to go into an alleyway, how to, cross all these linear danger areas with the roads. And then how do we do this hopscotch thing? And we also had Navy SEALs with us. In fact, my buddy Romero's squad had half, and then we also had the other half. And like we used them for our squad. I was like, hey, Senior Chief, like I'm gonna take my squad down. When you guys see us get to the second story, you guys can come down. At that point, we'll gain the foothold. And that's just what we figured it out, And like we looked up to those guys too, and they taught us some good things on the fly. Like on the fly, they taught us some really good things for CQB. So I feel like my squad got lucky. But in the first 2 weeks, we lost 14 guys. And that hit us hard because we were like, man, like we were set up for failure from like the get-go. The intel was bad. The support wasn't there. The rotary support wasn't there. The tanks weren't there, So, but then by the time those things got there, we were probably, I want to say like 1/4 down to the city. So we started at the northern railroads and we worked our way all the way from one side of Fallujah all the way down to the other side of Fallujah, literally clearing every nook and cranny that we could find. And then just little firefights here and there. And a lot of dudes getting blown up with IEDs that they had rigged in alleyways, like Kilo Company lost 22 dudes in one day because an entire alleyway was daisy chained with IEDs, not on the ground, on the wall. And so they waited for all these guys to go into this alleyway. And it was kind of, like, I'm not going to sit there and armchair quarterback those guys, but they should have probably spread out a little bit more, use a little more dispersion as infantry guys, you know what I mean? In the alleyway. Somehow they were all jammed in there, and maybe they were forced to, but like by the time we got there, it was a mess.
Yeah.
It was a mess. And so we grew up, man. That's why I tell people, like, Fallujah was like the best and worst deployment I've ever had. Because like we all grew up. Like the OIF-1 was cool because like we all kind of, we understood now what a firefight means and those stressors. But then Fallujah was like where everybody just grew up. Like we all became men because we saw our brothers go down. Like it wasn't like OIF-1 where we had a couple people, perish from certain firefights. Fallujah was different.
I remember being back home watching the initial invasion to when Fallujah started kicking off. And I remember they used to always show on all because back then, for the most part, all agencies were just like pushing the same thing, right? Talking about the war and the invasion. And you used to see like onesie, twosie pictures because they used to post the pictures of the service members who passed away. And then when Fallujah was happening, you would see like, it would just grow. Like, we lost 15, Marines today. And you're like, damn, like it's a lot of people dying each day, And I remember watching that because I was growing up at that time, as a teenager, like watching all that, like, fuck, like, this is crazy. And in my mind, I'm like, this might be my life at one point. Like, this might continue.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to know it did. It continued for a very long time. So your first tour out there, you guys were working with SEALs. I think that's interesting how you talk about how learning CQB and stuff on the fly, right? Like everybody has this perspective of, we talked about it earlier, like, oh, you're a Marine and you're like this badass gunfighter or whatever. But we talked about
collectively.
Most of what you learn is just to get you checked off so that you're a deployable asset, right?
Yeah, I mean, the infantry is just the most basic boxes you can check.
Yeah.
Because they're not trying to make you better at anything. Now, you'll naturally get better at things as you go to different schools and stuff, and some with your own experience, but there's no high standard there for curriculum. There's just high standard for performance.
And now you're going in somebody else's backyard and you know, expected to do something there.
So yeah, when you have that offset, it's very lopsided. So dude, we're badasses, we can perform, but we don't really perform to us the right amount of the right proficiency that we should be because the experience isn't there.
Right.
Obviously now it's different. But anyway, so then that was Fallujah, and then we all came back from Fallujah. And it's an interesting story about Fallujah that I'll add really quick is we were getting towards the main phase line, which is Elizabeth, which is also in line with Blackwater Bridge, that green bridge that crossed over across the river. We called that Blackwater Bridge because that's where the 4 Blackwater operators got hung after they went into Fallujah to buy some stuff, and then they ended up being overwhelmed and they got beaten, killed, and then dragged and then hung we called that Blackwater Bridge. But that was phase line Elizabeth. And I remember that we were down phase line Elizabeth one time, and one of my team leaders is like, Sergeant Mawlayee, it's like, I need you to see this. And I'm like running over to his corner and I'm looking down the street. He's like, you know who those guys are? I'm looking at them. I'm like, they're in, soft skin wood, like M81 Woodland.
Yeah.
Humvees, and like one of them has a minigun, and there's this dude on this minigun just like wah, 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 like just lighting up this hotel.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, who the fuck are these guys, bro? Like I'm calling it up, like, hey, like, does anybody know who these dudes are? And like by the time I could get back to that corner, because I had walked away, by the time I got back to that corner, they're gone. So nobody even knew who they were. We never got an answer. At least we did it on our level. And so then fast forward, like when I get to 5th Special Forces Group and I get to my first team, 5133. And I'm talking to the senior Echo, Derek, and we're just like, dude, you went to Iraq? And I was like, yeah, I went to Fallujah. He's like, oh, right on, dude. Like, what were you doing in Fallujah? And he was like, I was a squad leader, and he was like, yeah, we did a short amount of time in Fallujah. We weren't there too long, but we did a couple little missions inside there. And I was like, he was telling me, he was like, yeah, dude, I was a mini gunner. I was just a junior echo back there. They put me on the minigun because I was literally a new guy. That's kind of like what we do with our new guys. And so I was like, wait, you're on a minigun? I was like, I saw a minigun in Fallujah on Phase Line Elizabeth, like near the bridge, lighting up this hotel. He was like, dude, that was me. And I was like, oh my God, man, what's the chances of me leaving the Marine Corps? But like seeing those guys in Fallujah, that Humvee, that team, that ODA, and then me coming to that very ODA.
Wondering who the fuck are those guys? And then later on, you're actually.
And I told him, I was like, dude, from my point of view, I could barely make you guys out. You looked American, but I couldn't tell. And I was like, I didn't know anybody else that had a minigun. I just didn't know if you were Army, Navy. I even talked to I talked to the SEALs, and they were like, we don't know who those guys are. And I was like, JSOC? I was like, I don't know, ghosts.
Yeah.
So, but it was that team. It was 5133 that was there, and that was Derek on the minigun as a junior echo, brand new guy.
That's crazy. And you end up going to those guys.
And then I end up going to them.
You wanted to know who they were. Well, now you're going to know who they are. Yeah, that's crazy.
I just thought that was a crazy coincidence, out of all the ODAs and all the groups. So
you go there. So you do your time in the Marine Corps, a little bit over 4 years.
4.5, yeah.
4.5. You, at this point, you get out.
Mm-hmm.
What happens next?
So I took about 8 months break in service break in service. And I just chilled out for a little bit, man. Cause like after Fallujah, that was kind of hard. Like OF1 was hard in a different way, but like Fallujah was hard because we lost a lot of good friends there. And then people we knew from other companies and battalions. Cause like you're not buddy with everybody, but you still say what's up to those dudes and you see them and you might've went to like schools and stuff together. So came back from that, and that was, I just needed to decompress. I didn't quite know how. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to like stay in the game. I just didn't know how. Like they tried to offer me like a reenlistment bonus before I got out of the Marine Corps. They were like, we'll give you $45,000 and 2 schools of your choice. And I was like, that's actually pretty tempting for an infantry guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I turned it down because it was time for me to leave the fleet and go do a B billet, like go be an instructor at SOI, like School of Infantry, or go be a drill instructor. Yeah. No thanks, bro. and no thanks to the School of Infantry instructors either. I'm trying to I was like, no, dude, like I like what I do.
Yeah.
I just don't know if I want to keep doing it with the Marine Corps, or do I get out or do I try to become a Navy SEAL But then I decided like I'm gonna apply to Blackwater. So I did that, went through like a 30 or 45 day interview process. At 30 days, they told me I was hired. At 45 days, they basically gave me an offer letter to go to Iraq for a year, 3 on 1 off for basically 9 months. And it was like $186,000 tax free.
It's good money back then too.
As an E5 out of the Marine Corps, that was so much money.
You're balling, dude.
Yeah. Tax free?
Yeah.
Forget about it. But I talked to a bunch of people and I talked to my family. I talked to my wife. I was like, if I'm going to go over there and put my neck on the line, then I'd rather do it with like a military unit, because these guys have no support. Blackwater had 0 support back then. They didn't have any rotary. They didn't have a QRF. They didn't have, the QRF was hopefully like a military unit that was adjacent to them somewhere in their AO that could quickly react for them. So once I was like, I'm not doing it. So I turned down the offer letter and I decided, excuse me, here comes that cough I was telling you about.
Yeah.
So I turned it down, I decided I'm going to go into the Army trial for Special Forces, because by then I had also done a lot of research on Navy SEALs and Green Berets. And I knew stuff about Navy SEALs that I liked. But then when I learned about Green Berets was really what drew me to that. And it was just the essence of guerrilla warfare, unconventional warfare. Yeah. And so that, just knowing that Green Berets have a rich history in that, and like more than likely, if we go to Afghanistan or Iraq, we're going to have to be doing that kind of unconventional warfare. That's why I chose to go into the Army and be a Green Beret, even though I had easy access to the Navy and I could easily go try out, go to BUDS. But that's what I did. But I came back in 2006, late 2006, and then basically went to selection.
Got through selection first time, everything.
Got through selection and started the Q course, the qualification course. And about a year and a half later, or a little under a year and a half, I became a 18 Bravo, a weapons sergeant. I got fifth group as my group that I wanted for obvious reasons. And then I showed up to my first team in 07. And that was 5133. And then
the dudes from Fallujah that had the minigun.
The dudes from Fallujah. There's only two of them at the team then, because it was like Derek was a senior. Derek, in fact, was basically like the assistant team sergeant. He just wasn't an 18 Fox.
Yeah.
We didn't have an 18 Fox back then, or that for that team. So, but he was the 2IC, and like very senior, very knowledgeable. In fact, he taught me so much, man. And now he sings. Now he's a singer songwriter in Nashville, and he's doing really well for himself.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Derek Stoner Music, check it out. Derek Stoner Music.
That's cool.
But I love that guy. He taught me a lot. He also humbled me a lot.
That's good.
Because I came in from the Marine Corps like, bro, I went to Fallujah, and like some of y'all haven't even deployed yet.
Yeah, so you were like,
and I came in kind of a hothead, but then I quickly realized like, dude, this isn't the Marine Corps. Like, you need to calm the fuck down.
Yeah,
humble yourself.
Well, I think, and we talked about that earlier during.
In the Marine Corps, I was a big fish, bro. I was a squad leader. Squad leaders are gods in the Marine Corps infantry. You know, even team sergeants are like influenced by squad leaders, because 3 of us and 1 of them. Yeah, you know, they just trump us here and there, right? Yeah, but they listen to us. In the Army, or I should say, in Special Forces, I was back to a little fish, but acting like I was a big fish because I went to combat twice. Yep. But these are Green Berets, man. You know, they've been in on these teams for a while. They've done some really cool trainings, even if they haven't deployed yet, because there was like 2 X-rays on the team, you know, and the X-rays are just, you know, guys that come off the street, get a Special Forces contract, and then go straight to a team, you know, so they kind of fast track. But yeah, and then I spent a total of 07, it's like 13, 14 years in 5th group before I left.
So when you get to 5th group, you're obviously humbled, because you know, hey, it's not the Marine Corps anymore. You start to do things with 5th group. What was really your guys's, like, what really did you guys do mostly in 5th group? Because remember, at this time, GWAT's in full effect. Like, you know, you got Iraq, you got Afghanistan. Like,
the op tempo is hot, man. The op tempo is hot. Like, we were like, I mean, my first 5 years in Special Forces, I was home maybe 2 months at a time, and those were like in little spurts of like a couple weeks here, a couple weeks there. Between deployments that are 6 to 9 months long, between coming back from those deployments, and you get about 30 days where nobody just touches you. They're like, go home, spend time with the family, nobody come in, nobody report, right? Everybody gets like 30 days of leave and stuff. And then, but when you come back from that, you come back, you hit the ground running, because guess what? Schools are up. Everyone's going to schools. It's like, Kyle, what school do you want? Or as a new guy, this is a school that you're going to, and you have to be a yes man. You can't, you know, you're not senior enough to say no to a school. That comes later. But as a new guy, I'll take that. And like, they knew I was Afghan and Muslim, and they took advantage of that, and as well as they should have. They sent me to all the intel schools, all the human schools, all the, you know, kind of like the secret squirrel type schools, because they wanted me to be more involved in that. And that paid off later down the road for sure. You know, but at the time I didn't want to do that. I was like, no, dude, I want to be a Green Beret. Like, I want to learn how to fight better. I want to send me to, I was even down for the Ranger School, but they just didn't give it to me. But by the time my Ranger School slot came to me, I turned it down. I was more senior, but I wanted that stuff. I wanted to be like a better soldier, a better fighter, not go to intel schools and sit on our PowerPoints and do all that gay shit, you know, but that's just what I had to do. So, but then I learned that I loved it because I was good at it. Yeah. You know, going down the intel and human route was something that I enjoyed, and it also served me well. And so I was a weapons sergeant. I did a few deployments with 3-3. I did a few with a couple other teams, and then I ended up going to the 18 Fox course as an MOS change, because that's kind of like career progression for mainly Bravos, but sometimes Echoes and Charlies and not Deltas. But 18 Fox can come from anywhere. It's just there has to be an 18 Fox on the team. That's the assistant ops and intel guy. And so that's why it also made sense to send me. So I went to the Fox course. And when I got to the Fox course, I was assigned a country, because the Fox course is all about, it's 4 months long. And it basically, you have to basically, at the end of the 4 months, present a 100 to 120 page PowerPoint presentation on your country and how it affects your ODA. Yeah. And so you're learning everything about this country. I mean, we have software that brings us into that terrain, and we can get elevation heights on certain hills. So we can figure out like if where our ODA is, if we have a vantage point there, or if we're kind of like sitting ducks. I mean, the technology that we had, the software that we had was amazing. And this is 2010.
Yeah. It's much better now.
And so like, based on all that, and I had access to every intel analyst from all the 16 intel agencies. Like if I needed something from the agency, I would call my intel analyst for that country and be like, hey, Anna, what's the goods on this? Or can you answer this question? Or sometimes it was an email on Red Side, and it was stuff like that. But I put this mine was 113 pages, but I put this 113 page presentation together on Israel. And so I spent 4 months like learning the history of Israel, learning everything I needed to know about Israel in order to like present now how Israel would affect my ODA if we go there. And then when you present, I mean, you're presenting to a 1-star general, you're presenting to a delegate. It could be like a chief of station. You could be presenting to the ambassador to that country. For example, or a different country. The VIP that I briefed was the secretary to the ambassador of Lebanon. And so she came in, tall, beautiful Lebanese woman, speaks perfect English, of course, but like she knows she is it for like America's connection to Lebanon and the ambassador to Lebanon. And so I'm nervous, dude. Because also she's beautiful, like, yeah. Right? I'm just like, so I get through my presentation and like, I passed and all that, but it wasn't so much me becoming a fox that is like the point of the story. It's what I learned in the process and why I feel the way I do now about what's going on in Israel, Palestine, and why I try to talk about it as much as I can.
Yeah.
It's having access to all these sources of intel, legitimate sources of intel, that really woke me up to the truth of it all.
Well, and because it could be misunderstood when, for example, I see your Instagram daily on your story and you'll talk about, these stories and everything. And for the general public, obviously I understand this a little bit more, especially knowing what you did and everything. But I mean, like for the guy filming this right now, he would probably look at your story and be like, this is like some Green Beret Marine that just flipped off the edge and all of a sudden now is, going against Israel because he supports Palestine. Like it can come across that way because that's kind of how the general public likes to look at it, or they like to push it.
Right.
But
on the surface, it may look that way because
correct.
You would have to have a lot more context to actually understand.
Exactly. And in your situation here, it's very unique. You literally spent months at a time, not just walking around Israel looking at things. You legit were like studying this country and its vulnerabilities and its like its pros and its cons, right?
Yeah, and we had points of contact in Israel
that were doing legit stuff there.
That were here, like you know, we had points of contact in these different agencies that were basically Israeli liaisons. Yeah. So I could go just directly to the source if I needed to.
Correct, and it's not like we said a meme or something. Like it's legit information. So I think we, obviously we're gonna jump into this because I think it's an important topic that we ought to talk about and let everybody know. But just to finish up with your career as a Green Beret, your Marine Corps career was very unique. Your birthday was on 9/11. You're a brand new Marine. God, it's a lot to unfold. And then on top of that, you were part of the initial invasion of our country going into another mass war, right? You get to experience your first ever firefight. It's not like training can train you up all as you want, but when bullets start flying towards you, things are different.
Yeah.
What was your moment as a Green Beret where it was like a similar moment to that moment that you had getting off that Vic over in Iraq, knowing like, oh, I'm about to get in a firefight? Did you have a moment like that in your Green Beret career?
Where I knew I was getting into a firefight, or
not necessarily, but that moment, like, oh shit, like this is.
Well, it's different. Like it's the same as far as feelings go, because like the funny thing about firefights is the more firefights you get into, the more desensitized you get to the feelings that are attached to those firefights, the fear. And I mean, is it fear or is it nerves? Because I feel like the fear is always there, but then it's more of a controlled fear. The more experience you have with firefights, the more you can control that fear and like minimize it, you know, because otherwise it's overwhelming. It's like sensory overload. But I think it's more nerves that we'd have to describe.
Yeah.
Like, I think the nerves went away completely. And some of that fear is still there, but that fear is also like coated with confidence because you're like, okay, I'm scared, but I know what I'm doing, you know?
Yep.
And like, I just gotta, you know, just be smart, keep my head down, do what I need to or whatever. And that's just how it is. But I think that it was just really the first time that we hit an IED in Afghanistan, followed by small arms fire, that I was like, okay, like, here we go, right? Like, it's been 2 weeks since we got here and already this is happening. Okay, that's how it's going to be. So it's almost like I had to get my mind right to just accept that every time we stepped out of the wire, we're going to get hit with an IED and it's going to be followed up by some kind of small arms attack.
This episode is brought to you by Grind Ops Coffee Company. Established in 2021, Grind Ops Coffee Company offers handcrafted, fluid bed roasted coffee to suit any tactical, outdoor, and or hectic lifestyle. It was founded on the principles of grit, grind, and perseverance. Their mission is to fuel your mindset for any op. Serving as a canine handler with the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, founder Aaron Mesa drank coffee as a staple that fueled his day. As a natural-born tinkerer, he began experimenting with different roasting methods and flavor profiles. After lots of trial and error, Aaron had some damn good coffee. Aaron's dedication to Grind Ops Coffee Company mirrors the commitments he demonstrated to his country. Grind Ops Coffee Company helps support military and first responder nonprofit organizations. Law enforcement, officer owned and operated. Grind Ops Coffee Company. Go check them out today. grindopscoffeeco.com. Link will be in description. Check them out today.
So I think your situation is very unique because you're an Afghan. You're born in Afghanistan. You grew up in an Afghan culture with your family and everything. Now you're in Afghanistan fighting. What was that like?
It was something that I had already come to terms with because what you're asking me, where I had that struggle and that moment of like clarity, was in Iraq.
Yeah.
During OF1.
Yeah.
When I actually had to shoot at another Muslim and then like, you know, and then just be like, yeah, I'm doing the right thing, bro. Like, you're doing the right thing, you know, like, keep fighting because like, you know, like in Islam, it says, if you kill one human, it's like killing all of humanity. And to say the struggle was real at that moment where I got into that first firefight, I didn't know if I was hitting people or not, bro. Like, I had no idea where my bullets were going. I swear to you, I was aiming down my sights and I don't know if those bullets were hitting a person or not. And I don't know if I wanted to know. I think I was like, that's where the struggle started, was like, dude, I'm shooting at other Muslims. These dudes think they're doing the right thing. They're uniformed military guys protecting their country. Like, who's the real bad guy? Who's the real good guy here?
Yeah.
You know, we invaded a sovereign nation on false claims that we learned about later. WMDs and shit.
Yeah.
And now so are we really the good guys here? Because these dudes are, again, they're uniformed. They're not insurgents. They serve their country with, you know, their families are back home. They're just like us.
Yeah.
They're just defending their own country. And so that was like not just where I found clarity, where I had to say, well, okay, Kawa, that's true. But also, like, you're here, you got your buddy, you got your brothers on your left and right.
You've
like,
accepted it.
The whole thing is get us home safe. That's it. That's all it came down to.
Yeah.
Like, I squashed that whole religious thing in an instant because I was like, it doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter. Like, whatever I feel, it doesn't matter because now I got to get these guys home and they have to get me home. And that's where it died. That's where it died. But also something else was born inside me at that point. At that point, that moment of clarity is where I felt like, what the fuck are we actually doing, dude?
Yeah. And
so it's one thing to invade for Saddam. It's another thing to invade a country for Osama, for bin Laden, but then to stay there for 20 years, you know?
Yeah.
And so everything in retrospect is bullshit, if you ask me. If you say, Kawa, how do you feel about war now? I think it's fake as fuck, dude. I think it's manufactured, and I think we're just pawns in the game. And we fight these fucking wars for these rich ass dudes that never fucking shake our hand, never thank us, but they definitely profit off of it. And they don't send their own fucking sons and daughters. And some of them probably fucking got out of it. I mean, listen, we all love Trump, but the fact is that his dad got him out of the fucking war,
Did
out of service.
I
He's a
think,
draft dodger.
and
Let's
I
call it what
think
it is.
now the baseball bat's out. Let's hit the fucking ball. Like, I think this is really what I wanted to talk to you about, because, and I wanted to highlight your history first, because you're not some random bloke that just, you know, sits on the computer and is looking this shit up. You were born in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
You got out of it, came to the United States. You served the military. You went back to that environment.
Mm-hmm.
You went back to where you're from, you know, where you were born. And like you said, you shot your weapon at other Muslims, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you understand, you experienced this. You're not, because a lot of the people that have a lot of, you know, things to say about war and, you know, how we should be supporting Israel, we should be supporting Ukraine and all that bullshit. They've never experienced war. They've never even experienced the work up to war. They've never experienced even shooting a gun, knowing that you might have to jump in an airplane and go across the world to go fight a war against another person that thinks they're doing the right thing too, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's why I really wanted to have this conversation, because people need to see it from, like, and we get this because we're both in the military. You know, you could be saying like, oh, you know, fuck war, this, that, the other. And then I'm like, yo, what did you do? And then you're like, oh, I was like an admin guy for, like, no, you weren't a fucking admin guy. You were a fucking Marine Corps grunt in the initial invasion, and you were a Green Beret. And I promise you've seen the devil multiple times. And, you know, I think what better for people that are out here that I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of shit too, but I don't care, because like I told you, my job is to put this stuff out there in an unbiased way so that everybody could see what's out there.
Well, I appreciate, before we start, I just want to say thank you for like giving me a platform on your platform to also share some of the stuff that we're going to talk about, because I do it on my Instagram all the time. I don't think I do it enough, but I also don't want to like just, you know, my Instagram is not about politics or foreign policy. It's about shooting guns and cool, you know, cool kind of courses that people want to learn and training. But the more I've been involved in Instagram and social media, and the more I see where this country's headed, I feel like I have to give some of that up and actually now speak up about the bigger problems, which is I love teaching about guns and tactics and stuff. But now there's bigger problems at hand, because, you know, forget training, but like we don't even understand what's going on in our own country, let alone what's going on overseas. So like, what are you training for, bro?
Yeah, what good are you with the gun if you don't know what you're shooting it for?
So like now my page is more so like, let me explain as through my experience and my background, let me try to give you guys as much context as I can give you about what's going on with Israel-Palestine. But I don't just stay overseas with what I talk about. I bring it back home.
Correct.
And that's why it's so important for Americans to understand that the way Israel-Palestine affects us is more of an internal issue than an external issue. Like Hamas will never come here to kill us, but there's other ways that we are involved in that because of the other party, because of Israel. Yeah. They are a detriment to this government and to this country, and they have gotten us into several wars. In fact, it was Netanyahu in 2003 that came before Congress and said that we should invade Iraq, and after we invade Iraq, the whole region is going to be safer. Sorry, I didn't know that the region wasn't safe, and from the get-go. Saddam wasn't the best guy, right? He did some fucked up shit, but dude, he ran that country like you know, like a chef runs a kitchen.
You know, it's funny you say that, because I want to bring up something very, like, it's kind of off topic, but it goes to show what kind of country they also had before. I don't know if you're familiar or you listen to like electronic music, like EDM and stuff like that. You know who DJ Tiesto is? Tiesto?
Yeah, I love Tiesto.
Yeah, he was like, I mean, when I grew up, EDM was my thing, and I, you know, seen Tiesto a couple times and stuff. I remember I used to watch videos of Tiesto spinning in Baghdad. Like, they had a nightlife. They had a life. You know what I mean? I don't think that stuff happens much nowadays.
No, unfortunately not. But, you know, just like Iraq was a touristy place at one point, Afghanistan was also very touristy in the 60s and 70s before the Russians invaded. People would come from all over Europe just to go to the mountains and see these beautiful places and towns. But, you know, obviously war will send people back in time and history. Like, you know, Afghanistan got sent to the Stone Ages because of all the war. And that's, I mean, so anyway, getting back to Israel-Palestine, it started, my education of Israel-Palestine started in the Fox course, but then that's just where it started. That's just the foundation. It's grown exponentially since then with my own research, but also like talking to other people.
I'll be very honest with you. I think it takes a lot of courage for another man to sit here in front of another man and admit something to another person, that because we can all sit here and bullshit each other, right? And I want him to like me, so I'm going to say things. But when I first met you, we talked a little bit about Hamas. We were drinking, smoking a cigar, and I can see where you do have that. I'm not saying hatred, but that dislike to terrorism. Yeah, I know you're not like, oh, just because you don't stand for certain things doesn't mean that you automatically agree with like Hamas or any of that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So I got to see that from you, and then I seen your post and stuff later, and I told Chris, I said, I'm curious. I said, because I had just started to learn who you were, and I was like, is he like flipping off the edge over there? Like, is he like going off to think like, is he like basically condoning what Hamas did to Israel on October 7th? But then I told myself, no, Chris, you're better than that. You're going to look into why he's saying these things. Mm-hmm. So I started looking more and more, and that's when I started really getting interested in wanting to actually have you on, because I started to realize that you had a lot. Me and Chris talked a little bit because he knows some people that knew you and stuff, and told me some of the stuff you did. Mm-hmm. And I saw that you've experienced life in a lot deeper than what. Because the normal human being would look at your Instagram and be like, yo, this guy's like, he hates Israel or something. But there's a reason why you're discussing this.
That would be a fair assumption.
Yeah, especially for people who don't understand.
And when we say hate Israel, we have to clarify that. It's not that I hate the people of Israel. It's that I hate the entity of Israel, because they're basically like the most elaborate crime organization in the world. And that's when I say I hate Israel, I hate that. I hate Netanyahu. I can tell you I hate Netanyahu. That guy's a fucking clown.
Well, I'll say this, Kawa, and before we get deeper on that, and I don't want to cut you off, but looking into what you would say and some of the stories you would share, I started doing a lot of my own research myself.
And that's all I asked for.
I am going to sit here right now and agree with you 100%. I fucking hate that guy too, because he has used and pushed that rhetoric of, it's in the Bible and you got to stand behind Israel. And if you don't, you're not, Christian or whatever you want to call it. But nowhere in the fucking Bible that I see where it says you have to spend mass millions and billions of dollars and go just demolish
entire villages and towns,
and then not give them even a fucking tent
nothing
to say, here, stay in the tent since I took your whole apartment complex down. Yeah, because there was a Hamas guy in the restroom on the fourth floor, so I blew up the whole thing.
But you would have to be a decent human being to do that, right? And that's ironic because you destroyed their home. So I guess you're going to show some decency now. But that's not even what they do. That's not their goal. That's not their objective. Their objective is to eradicate every Palestinian off that land because they want the real estate. And they don't just want the real estate for like hotels and beach resorts. They want the real estate because they just got approved for an oil pipeline that they strategically placed right through Gaza. And so now they're using that like, well, we need to take Gaza now because the pipeline is going through it. It's like they do all these different things, but it's eradication. It's genocide at its very core. And they don't even care about the people, because if they cared about people, they were like, listen, we just want your land. We don't want to fight you. So stop attacking us. We'll relocate you. We'll give you some money and get gone. Like, you can't even offer them that. No, you rather just bomb them and kill them indiscriminately, build a big ass wall around Gaza, making an open air prison. Like, where are these people supposed to go? Because you already did a deal with Egypt not to let them in, and you already did a deal with Jordan not to let them in. So when they say, well, Jordan won't even take Palestinians and Egypt won't even take Palestinians because these people don't belong, well, it's because you made it that way. So where are these people? Where are they supposed to go? Are they supposed to swim out into the ocean?
Yeah, I mean that's.
So give them an exit strategy, but you won't. So when you corner something, what happens?
And I think that's we talked about it earlier too, because we talked about, look, I don't, what happened on October 7th was fucking terrible. It was awful, right? I'm a big believer in, if you're going to go after somebody, at least go after their military or something. And those kids and women and stuff didn't have to die that way. I do not agree with that. But we also talked about it earlier. That was not just Hamas. There was a lot more influence in that attack. That And we now know it was all those guys flying in on those little hang gliders and stuff. They were not a lot of them were Hamas. There was Al-Qaeda guys in there. There was a mixture of folks there. And I think what I really
well, also Hamas didn't kill 1,200 people, and that's been proven by now. And it's also been very much proven that Israel did kill several of their own Israeli people with their helicopters. In fact, roughly about 700.
And I think the interesting thing too is when this all started, the whole motivation of we're gonna go into Palestine and take out Hamas, right? Let's go in there and get rid of Hamas.
Yeah, because Hamas, man, they're terrorists.
Yeah. But nobody said
they won't leave us alone. They keep shooting rockets over to Israel, and like we're just victims. We're defenseless. We have to kill these people.
But nobody said they were gonna go demolish a whole city and kill children and stuff like that. Because I'm going to be honest.
How do you find? First of all, I'm sorry. How do they even find Hamas? Because I'm pretty sure insurgents dress like everybody else, right? And if they're so successful with killing Hamas, how come we don't see it on TikTok? How come instead all we see is them dressing up like women, taking the toys of kids, destroying them? Why do we only see them bombing houses? Why do you only see them, sitting there and mocking, just breaking dishes and stuff? How come I never see like Hamas fighters dead in kit with some AKs and RPGs? How come I never see that?
Kawas, I have a very close colleague that is with the IDF. And you would think that if I put him in this room right now, you and him would disagree on a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And it's actually the opposite. Mm. And I would love to have this guy on a podcast, but he refuses. And I understand and I respect that because I'm sure.
Just give him the voice thing that it's like.
Yeah, right. Cover him up. That would be ideal. Because the stuff I've heard from this guy.
Give him an Irish accent.
Yeah, exactly. Fuck.
Dude, why is this Irish dude talking about Israel? What the fuck?
Where'd he come from? And it's a guy who lives there right now and stuff. And he's. That's it. I'm just not going to say any more about him. But other than that, the thing with him is he's there. He's going through all this stuff. He's experiencing it. And the stuff he has to say it's fucked up, man. Because, it's the same thing with like Americans when the invasion happened, Iraq, Afghanistan, the plenty of years that you thought you're over there supporting, the 9/11 thing, and they hit us on our towers and they hit us.
GWAT, baby. Yeah. Global war on terrorism.
Yeah.
That's the slogan.
You thought that's what you were there for. And, for me, when it really opened my eyes was Benghazi. Benghazi was the one that I was like, man, fuck the people who are telling us what to do. When you saw what happened in Benghazi and how our folks were fucking left to hang out and dry out there, and the people in Washington were basically like, when there was motive behind that, the whole response was, we're not supposed to be there. Well, guess what? We're fucking there. Yeah. So figure it out and help these fuckers get back home alive. And they let them down. And there's more. I'm not going to go into the Benghazi trip, but that's when I started to realize, and I started to really look into things and say like, hey, that whole, fuck yeah, the red, white, and blue, let's fight for it and stuff. That's why now I think, especially during the election, this recent election, I was very vocal because before I didn't care to tell people these things and stuff, but I started to say, okay, it's better that we start to actually educate these people because, like we said, they're fighting off little quick memes that they see, right? Then they think that's true. So right now, all the people, like I said, this woman the other day saying that, her kids are going to get killed by the government because, this whole women's rights is taken away from them and stuff like that. And look, we both stand on the same way. We both supported Trump. We both voted for Trump. We both did our thing, but we also know what his flaws are too, right? But we also knew which of the evils do you want, right? Where do you?
Because I got this question asked of me a few times, especially by like Muslim friends. Like who do we like? Just in your opinion, who do we vote for? Because they're both like pro Israel, and they're not advocating for Palestine. Who do we vote for? And I was like, guys, like I literally tell stories on Instagram about this stuff and try to articulate it in a way to make it make sense to Americans that by being pro-Palestine doesn't mean that you're pro-Hamas. Being pro-America doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be pro-Israel. being pro-Christian doesn't mean that you have to be pro-Judaism and vice versa.
Correct.
Like I can be all these things at once. Watch. I can be anti-Hamas. I can be pro-Palestine. I can be anti-Israeli government. I can be pro-Israeli people, and I can be pro-America all at once. How did I just do that? I don't know. Maybe some logic and common sense. I'm not tying my emotions to a religious text that I can't even fully comprehend.
Correct.
I'm not tying my own religion to a certain people. I'm not advocating for Palestine because they're Muslims. I'm advocating for Palestine because they are literally they have been under oppression for 80 years. And more so than 80 years. 80 years is just when around Palestine was born. Or sorry, Israel was born. But that was happening way before that. And like so I go back in history with this all the time on Instagram because I don't want to just stay in one place. Like I go back and I'm like, and the way I explain it is, if you guys truly want to understand what is happening and what the history of Israel is, because right now you're like, well, if Hamas just stops attacking Israel, then Israel wouldn't have to kill a bunch of Palestinians. And I'm like, dude, surface level. That was so surface level, dude. That was such a noob statement. But that's okay. It's not your fault. You're just ignorant because you won't take the time to research, but you also believe in memes. And so, but if you want to really understand this, you have to reverse engineer it. You have to ask the questions. Why does Hamas want to attack Israel? And then you'll say, well, okay, why is Israel doing this? And where did Hamas come from? And these are the questions that'll take you back to that actual birth of all this. And nobody asks those questions because they don't know who to ask. But two, I guess ChatGPT and Google is too hard for them to figure out. And so they don't do that, but then they just go with the main narrative because, well, they don't want to be against the grain because, I don't want to get, I don't want to get persecuted by my friends, but all of a sudden being pro-Palestine. So they're just in this stalemate, right? But like reverse engineer your questions, whereas, well, where did Hamas come from? And how did Israel become Israel? And what was happening in Israel before Israel? Like what was happening in Palestine before Israel? Because there was Muslims, Jews, and Christians living in Palestine for several hundred years in peace. Well, because they're all, guess what? They're all Arabs.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because we talked about it earlier as well.
Yeah.
I keep referring to what we talked about earlier. So
we actually did a podcast before this podcast, guys. So this is just a repeat. This is for safety.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just joking.
So, the thing, like I talked about, hopefully having a trip soon, out that way.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is the place that I'm going to, I won't be like super specific on where I'm going, but the place that I'm going to, you're currently being told that there's just nothing but bad Hezbollah folks there and stuff like that. But the people I'm actually going to go see are Christian. They're in that country in between Israel and over here on this and Hezbollah, and there's rockets flying over their head and they're Christian mingling around Muslims.
Yeah. I mean, Lebanon has a huge Christian population. Yeah. Everybody thinks Lebanon is like Muslim. Actually, no.
There's a lot of Christians.
It's almost half Muslim, half Christian.
Yeah.
In fact, it's all the way through the government. There's, in fact, I think I forget the last president or whatever. I think that guy was a Christian.
Yeah.
So it's not just like this little Christian pocket. No, half of Lebanon is Christian. And guess what? Christians are dying because of Israel in South Lebanon right now.
Yeah. And I'm telling you this because I spoke with a Christian guy who's down there right now, who lives there, and we talk daily, and he's telling me what's going on. And he goes, brother, how am I supposed to support Israel when I'm watching this shit happen in my front door? And I was like, holy shit. And that's when I start to think about it. And you're like, man, because look, we talk about October 7th. The mission was to go eradicate Hamas. Okay. You're telling me the IDF, who has all this technology and everything, does not have the ability to go and pick these guys out? Because all you're doing right now by obliterating that whole village and everything else that's there is you're recruiting for Hamas. Because you're taking somebody's child, you're taking somebody's mother, and then I'm going to tell you something right now. If my mom and my little sister got blown the fuck up right in front of me, I promise you that I'm going to go after those guys in that green uniform that killed my family.
That's it.
Whether if I thought they were right or wrong in the beginning, I don't care. I'm going to go after them every single time now.
But that's a byproduct that's by design.
Correct.
They need Hamas. Israel needs Hamas.
Yeah.
If there was no Hamas in Palestine, Israel would have to stop killing people. And they can't stop killing people because then they wouldn't achieve their agenda. They wouldn't gain the real estate. They wouldn't, eventually kick out all the non-Jewish people. And then they wouldn't have their greater Israel, and they obviously wouldn't build their oil pipeline and then get religious all you want with the third temple. But like none of that would happen. So they don't want a solution. They have their solution. Their solution is complete annihilation of these people off that land. Even though back in the 40s, when the very white and pale-skinned European Jews came from parts of Europe to Palestine, the Palestinians took them with open arms. The flotillas that were coming with these new Jews, the Palestinians were right there with food, water, clothes, and some of them even offered their shelter, their homes. Some of them made tents in their backyards for them to sleep in. I mean, these people were welcomed with open arms because Muslims, again, are peace-loving people. And so naturally, these Palestinians, they probably didn't want to do it. But then there's a lot of people that are like, no, they believe the story of World War II. And they're like, dude, 6 million Jews died and we need to give these people some shelter. So yes, they can stay here. But then what quickly happened after that is that you had Jewish little street gangs and militias forming, and they would go rob Palestinians and they would kill them in the streets and they would rape their women. And there's a whole docu-film called Tantura that you guys need to look up and watch that first, because those are soldiers, Israeli soldiers from way back in those days prior to Israel being a thing, talking about killing and raping. These are old 80, 90-year-old men on a docu-film talking about, yeah, we did it. And they're laughing. Because what can they do as old men now? They kind of have to laugh. The guilt is probably too much. They die of a heart attack, So, but that's where it starts. Now I'm taking you guys to the core of it. We're not going to go any further back in history. We don't need to, but it's from the time that these European Jews come to Palestine, and then all of a sudden they have this like self entitlement, this their whole religious thing of, well, God gave us this land 4,000 years ago, so now it's ours, and your home is mine, and that farm is mine, oh, and your animal is mine, and I need you to go. But 4,000 years ago, bro, you haven't been alive that long, and to this day, most Israelis can't trace their lineage back 4,000 years anyway. That's why genetic tracing is not even allowed in Israel, but you can still get away with it. You just have to order it somewhere else, It's like getting steroids, I guess.
Yeah.
But people get it, and they still want to do genetic testing, but they don't allow. You can go to the court and have a special request to do a genetic testing, like a 23andMe, but otherwise you can't do that in Israel. I wonder why. Regardless, these people show up and they're welcomed, they're taken in, but then they turn on those people. Not only do they turn on those people, but they strike deals with the US and the UK, because these deals have been happening since the early 1900s. The plan for Palestine was way back then, not in 48. And now they're militarized. So once they become a nation, they quickly become militarized. The UK gives them stuff, the US gives them stuff. And now they're using their military might to do the same things they were doing as little teenage street gangs. But now they have military firepower to kick these people out of their homes, take over their land, take over their farms, and whatever they want. And so naturally, when you see the map of Palestine slowly turning into Israel, bigger, 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 it's because they kept encroaching on the very people that took them in the first place.
Kawa, I think it's really this way of thinking and this way of looking into things and this way of understanding things can go into a lot of topics that are happening currently in our world.
100%.
For example, Ukraine.
Because we're talking about principles.
Exactly.
Now.
Ukraine. The movement of gun control in the United States is so big, and there's so many people that just want it to go their way that they're willing to do anything to create. Because remember, it's easy to say, for example, let's see, Israel. And I'm not saying Israel, like the people of Israel, the leadership, right? The corrupt leadership.
Hey guys, do you live in Houston or the surrounding areas? Well, Clean Cut Lawn and Landscaping. Transform your outdoor space with Houston's premier landscaping experts. Call them today at 832-985-2287. Clean Cut Lawn and Landscaping offers a wide range of services to keep your yard looking the best, including full lawn service, shrub trimming, mulching, weed control, fertilizer programs, seasonal cleanups. At Clean Cut Lawn and Landscaping, they pride themselves on delivering top-notch services to maintain the beauty of your lawn all year long. Whether you need a regular maintenance or a one-time cleanup, their team of professionals is here to help. Why choose Clean Cut Lawn and Landscaping? They have expert care, they're reliable service, and they have affordable rates. Give your lawn the care it deserves with Clean Cut Lawn and Landscaping. If you live in the Houston area, call them 832-985-2287. Give them a call today to schedule your service.
They want, let's say, they want to take this. You got to have to do something to make it look like you're responding with, retaliatory force to defend what they did to you or whatever. But sometimes it makes you fucking wonder, are these people doing this thing purposely so that they have that reason to go do what they're to match their agenda? And I'm not trying to go off on this rabbit hole real quick, but Sandy Hook was a prime example. Mm-hmm. There was an individual police officer who spotted an individual running from that school that he said looked very professional. Mm-hmm. And somehow, some way, this police officer dies of a heart attack at home a week later before everything started to get looked into. When they found those kids in that school, and I'm not saying the kids didn't get shot or anything, because they did.
Right.
But when they found some of those kids had 5.56 rounds in them. That shooter, when he was found, had a handgun and a shotgun on him. You know where the AR was? In his trunk. But of course, I'll get called that I'm a tin hat guy, conspiracy theory and stuff.
I've been called that too.
Yeah. And you sit there and you look at that, and look, I'm a gun owner. Me and you are both gun owners. We stand behind it and everything.
Absolutely.
But when you see shit like that, then you're like, it causes that 50-50, that argument, and they thrive off that. It's like, for example, what's going on today with our politics, with our country. You have, the left saying, there you go, women's rights is now gone. You're screwed. It's going to be like, terrible. Women can't study anymore. They can't have babies. They can't do any of that. That's not fucking true. Yeah. And I tell you one thing right now, I voted for the right? Mm. It'll be the fucking death of me to see a woman get stripped of her rights in our soil here in America.
Yeah.
I'm sure you would too. Stand up right in front of that woman, not let a tyrant government take over her rights.
No, 100%, man. I mean, we already did that, and we would do that now. I mean, that's like that whole thing is ridiculous. But again, it just kind of goes back to the mainstream media brainwashing tactics.
Correct.
And it really comes down to strategy. Like, what is it that they want in this country? Control.
Correct.
How do you gain control? Where does control come from? Right? Again, reverse engineer it. Well, in order to gain control, we would have to cause so much divide that then the government has to come in now and say, guys, it's like kids, right?
Yep.
Like, listen, you kids are getting too ruly. Now I have to get involved. I'm about to put everybody in timeout. But how do we get to that point where there's so much divide? Well, create the issues. Use race, use religion, use sex, use education, use food, use whatever you want. Cops versus black people, cops versus white people. It doesn't matter. That is how once you start planting these seeds, those seeds grow in the communities because people are like sheep and they just believe stuff. They get drunk off that government Kool-Aid. And so now you naturally have divide. And like, it's just like planting. What kind of garden do you want to plant? You want to plant a garden full of cacti that will poke your ass? Or do you want beautiful flowers? Well, then that's the seeds that you plant. So in this case, in America, there are seeds of divide planted in different communities, different demographics of people. And now they're starting to, they have been, kind of growing and you see the divide. And now it's getting to a place where you got Americans saying, well, you guys voted for Trump and I feel like killing Trump, or I feel like killing conservatives it's gotten to a place where Americans want to commit violence on Americans just for political affiliations.
Correct.
Not even because
when that person of that party probably doesn't even give a fuck about them.
No, but that's a whole different topic.
Yeah.
But then now if it gets that bad, and don't forget you got to add in some little wild cards like illegal aliens, about 20 million or so, 10 million. Doesn't matter. 10 million, 20 million. What's the difference at that point? And you have to have these little wild cards and stuff like that, because that is what keeps that's what keeps it the water the water very like muddy.
Yeah.
right? Because people are trying to figure out where like, no, guys, like cops don't hate black people. Like we don't just shoot them. And it's like, okay, that's kind of getting solved maybe over there, or maybe it's not. But then it's like, oh, illegal aliens. And it's like, oh God, like which one do I pay attention to first? The GMO food, the illegal aliens, or like cops killing black people? Like, I don't know. And you become overwhelmed and you turn into like a robot.
Or abortion that
And
everybody's had control to be able to solve and they still haven't.
Or abortion, you know, and abortion is just a very like, you got to be like a hard yes or a hard no on abortion. And I get it. Like there is no in between. Trump wants to say that I'll have exceptions for 3 different circumstances like rape or incest or something like that, or the mother's health. Yeah. I forget the third one was. And I agree with those. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. But you're either pro-life or you're not.
But it's a good, so I tell people that abortion is never going to be solved for people because it's a perfect voting thing. Because like you just said, you 50-50 on that one.
Yeah.
And that's an easy one that if the guy sitting across this room does not agree with abortion and the other, you agree with it or whatever, you already know that those are 2 opposing votes right there.
Yeah.
Regardless.
And like the left is like the parent that just lets their kids do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah. And then don't like when people tell them not
and
to
don't punish them.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
and that's the left. They're like, not only can you guys have abortions, but we'll pay for your abortions. We will provide the places for your abortions. Like they make it very easy.
You know, Kawa, a funny thing you say that. I was in law enforcement at one point in my life, and I was in New Mexico. And in New Mexico, they had needle switch out programs. We encourage these heroin addicts and stuff to swap needles and have clean needles because we want to prevent Hep C and AIDS and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you're basically saying like because the whole response was, well, they're going to do it anyways. I'm like, no, don't fucking give them more motive to continue to do it.
You're an enabler.
Yeah, you're enabling it. You know, if I tell my kid, you know, just don't do it this way or whatever, I'm basically keep doing it, but find another fucking way around it.
Right.
You know, so that's the crazy thing. But to get back on the Israel and Palestine thing, man, like, you know, I did my research more. I still am. And just looking at your perspective of it opened my eyes a lot because I listened to what you said, but I also went and also found things so that I can get that backing. And one of the biggest interesting thing is we talked a little bit about earlier was Kennedy, right? Kennedy didn't have such a positive view towards Israel. And the agency back in the day created an operation called Mockingbird against Kennedy. Yeah. And there was 400 journalists throughout the United States, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, everybody, the Post, everybody. And they were hired specifically to tarnish the name of the Kennedys.
Yeah.
And then the Kennedys had this momentum doing big things and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden they get offed. You know, the 2 brothers get offed, man. You know, and now the funny thing is the son, Robert, he's out here trying to, you know, get into office and stuff. To me personally, had the Democrats actually endorsed that guy and molded him up and stuff like that, that guy would have been a pretty damn good running opponent against Donald Trump compared to Kamala, right? Compared to Kamala or Biden. But they just did not accept that guy. And there's a reason behind that.
Yeah.
He doesn't stand with what they believe and what they're seeing, right?
Yeah.
And I think that alone right there, I would love for people to see and look up Operation Mockingbird and look up the influence that Israel had on the negativity towards the Kennedys. Yeah. That was insane, man.
That'd be a nice little rabbit hole for you guys to go down.
That is a crazy rabbit hole. I'm currently on that one.
Also, it's declassified by now.
Yeah, it is.
And like, it's all open source and there's no denying it. Just like 9/11 will be declassified one day, but nobody's going to care by then. Just like nobody cares now about Mockingbird. The fact that Israel was so involved in that. Nobody cares about how much Israel is involved in our country now. Nobody cares about how much AIPAC has its tentacles wrapped around our politicians through donations or career suicide. Those are the only 2 things. We'll give you a donation, you support everything Israel, or we'll donate to the other guy, and then you're not gonna have a next term.
The bureaucracy is what runs this country currently. Like the bureaucrats.
And that's what it is. And so when I sit here and I advocate for, when I talk about the whole Israel-Palestine thing, it's because I bring it back home. I bring it directly back to us. At the end of the day, I can give a fuck about Israel or Palestine, but I give a fuck about this country. And if I've learned that there's an entity out there, in this case, Israel, who uses powerful lobbies and a lot of our own money to basically bribe our politicians to vote in their favor, then I'm going to make sure that Americans know about it. And that's the circle of life for Israel, America. America has politicians that are bought by Israel, by AIPAC. And when I say bought, it means that they have donated so much money to their campaigns that they basically own them at this point. Or like I said, next term, it's going to be the other guy, his opposite running guy, and the candidate. And this guy's going to be out of a job. So nobody wants career suicide. And honestly, nobody has an emotional tie to Palestine. So why not say I'm pro-Israel? You know, I'm American. I live in Idaho or Ohio or Nebraska or California. I don't care what happens in Palestine. Sure, give me your money. Let me win this campaign and I'll sign anything that is pro-Israel, which is a lot of money, in fact, 15 to 20 billion every year. So then now that 15, 20 billion goes to Israel for their death and destruction of Palestinians. And now apparently Lebanon, Yemen, Syria, right? And they're attacking everybody at this point. But then they give a fraction of that money back to AIPAC so that AIPAC can further bribe future politicians. And this is the circle of life right here. America to Israel, Israel back to AIPAC, AIPAC to the politicians, politicians to Israel. I mean, it's
a proxy war amongst the rich, and they're paying people.
Well, it's not rich. It's a proxy,
powerful people.
It's Zionist. Yeah. Let's just call it what it is. It's Zionism.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's just be real with that. We have a Zionist problem in this country. Joe Biden himself admitted just in the recent years that you don't have to be Jewish to be a Zionist. He literally said that. Like, why do you not believe him? He's not that senile, guys. If the man says he's a Zionist, then he's a Zionist. And you need to understand what a Zionist means. These are people that have one agenda, and that is to run the world from Israel and control it through the UN. One world government, one world currency, one world rules.
I saw a very interesting video the other day.
Like, that sounds crazy. That sounds crazy, right?
Yeah.
But guess what? We're already headed that way. I mean, how much power does the WEF have? How much power does the WHO have?
The WHO, I know.
Right? How much power is the UN gonna have? I mean, it's not, if you just, like I said, some of the stuff is blatantly in your face where you just have to like accept it. And some of the stuff you kind of have to dig for it. Like Chris, you're saying, you didn't just take my word for it. Yeah. You were like, okay, what Kawas is saying is interesting, but let me just do my own due diligence.
Yeah.
Let me go look it up because I want to form my own opinion, not be a fucking sheep to Kawa.
Yeah.
And I tell people that all the time, like, don't take my word for it, guys. Go research this stuff on your own. And then if you have questions, come to me. I'll help you or help answer questions, but you need to come to your own conclusions. I'm just giving you the context.
You know who I admire him and I look up to his podcast a lot because that's where I get a lot of my ideas and my way because I want to do what he's doing. Sean Ryan, he had this negative approach towards psychedelics at one point in his life. And then he started doing more research and stuff and then tried it for himself and everything. And he's come out publicly saying, I'm sorry for shaming something because I thought that was what I was told to believe and look after. But I think a lot of us,
or like Joe Rogan saying he was a Democrat.
Yeah.
Now, now he's waking up.
Exactly. And I told you earlier when we were having dinner, I grew up young, dumb. Who said that term? Young, dumb, and full of cum. I joined the Marine Corps. And,
we'll bleep it out, right?
Yeah. and I had this dumb mentality of, everybody in the Middle East is a fucking terrorist. Right. And then you become wise. And there's a humbling moment in your life that realizes, wait, hold on. You shut up for a second. Let me figure out what's going on over here. Because that's not what's happening what this fucking guy told me to think about you. And I would love for more Americans to become that way. And I tell everybody nowadays, and this is why I really wanted to have this conversation with you, is in America, we talk about, we're not free anymore. This isn't the land of the free. We can't do this. We can't do that. But I tell you what.
Trying to take my rights, bro.
Exactly. There's so much freedom in this country. You know why? Because you have things like this and that computer that he's using over there that you can easily get on, and it's not regulated as much as other countries and all that good stuff. And you can go simply educate yourself off of this device and find so much information that is actually publicly out there.
Yeah.
And yet
people
remember?
don't understand what freedom is anymore.
No.
They really don't understand it, because in order to really appreciate something, you have to lose it. And when's the last time Americans have lost any of their actual rights or freedoms?
Never.
Not ever, really. We have definitely been infringed upon, but definitely we haven't lost anything.
Yeah.
But until you lose something, you'll never truly appreciate it, dude. And that's just, they say that about love. They say that about some other things, but your freedoms we've all taken our freedoms so for granted. I'll just prove it to you right now. I've only lived in Texas for 3 years. I thought that when I was leaving California and I was coming to Texas, that I was coming to a free state where I could shoot whatever I want. I could own whatever I want.
Yeah.
I could go to ranges and literally just show up with a minigun and just go blasting. I'll tell you right now that in Houston, there's only one range out of like 11 that won't let you do anything that we want to do on a range, like move and shoot.
I say that all the time, all the time.
And so where I'm going with this, like California ranges and the California 2A community has more freedom within their 2A community than Texas does here.
I agree.
Even though here you can own cool stuff.
Yeah.
But what's the point of owning cool stuff when everyone here has turned into a FUD?
Everything's privatized here. It's all,
yeah. People are like, no, bro, you can't shoot that fast. Oh, no, bro, you can't shoot and move. Low light. No, forget about it. We have a noise ordinance. Like, dude, it's Texas. Okay, but whatever. So then, like, you just, in California, I can take my SBR, throw my suppressor on, and go full auto, and nobody in California at those ranges that we shoot at are going to care. Why? Because we all look out for one another. Why? Because we know that our rights are so like on that line of maybe going away, because you have people like Newsom and before you had, ban, the whole ban the assault weapons and all that.
Yeah.
Is that they appreciate it. And therefore, because they appreciate it, they have organized in a way where it's like, listen, if you're the range owner, like, bro, don't rat me out and I'll bring you business. Like, we're in this together. Yeah. You need the 2A as much as I do. So you let me show up with my homies and shoot my full auto SBRs, but I'll also like bring you customers and like put on classes. Just don't rat me out. The same thing goes with almost some of the LE agencies out there. Some of the LE agencies out there are very 2A friendly.
There's a range here in Houston, and I won't say their name because I'm not a dick like that, but I went there. And they have this area where, you can do the move and shoot thing and everything. So I asked, how can I utilize that? So I'm tired of sitting there on the line, and that's just not how I like to shoot anymore, And I was told it's only for experienced persons and law enforcement. Okay. It's like, well, can I take a test or something to show you that I can, run my gun here? No. Why? Because I didn't know. And then a guy that I know personally goes shooting with me. He knows somebody. I'm teaching this guy things. And all of a sudden he's using the area because he knows somebody. And that happens a lot here. I just acquired some location in New Mexico to run courses up there. And everybody's like, well, are you allowed to do that? I could do whatever the fuck I want on that land. And I told you earlier about what we were doing up in the mountains of New Mexico. We were training, another country's military. We were shooting Gustavs and shit, doing the fuck, whatever you want. People were like, whoa, the ATF. I was like, ATF came and checked things, made sure everything was good. Yeah. But everybody looks out for each other. And it's funny you say that about California, because I used to always think like, oh, fucking California, you can't do this, you can't do that. The 2A community there is very unique. It's like, there's so many, like, I tell people, if you're looking for a low light course or, even long range courses and stuff like that, where you're out in the open, you're doing things, California's got a lot of that. Yeah. I mean, all the ranges around SoCal are like, dude, you can do whatever you want, low light, night vision. It doesn't matter, because again, it goes back to them appreciating their freedoms and their rights. That's why they have banded together. The community, that's why I tell people SoCal has the strongest like 2A shooter gun training community in the country. And people are like, what, California? Like, yeah, dude, like, what about Florida? Nah, I'm sorry. Florida can't touch California. In fact, nobody can touch California. And so that goes back to what I'm saying about Americans in general and how they have taken their rights for granted. It's just a societal condition that when you have something for so long, that you will naturally start to become desensitized to that item, and you will just take it for granted eventually. And that's what's happened to Americans is
we have taken some of our rights for granted for way too long, and now we're so like we're so little in the scheme of things that when we try to voice our opinions, like there is no momentum there. There is no, like, unless somebody takes out a class action lawsuit or tries to go the legal route, nothing's going to happen. There's nobody marching for the 2A. There's nobody advocating for the 2A the way we should be. It's just a bunch of like, join our club and support us, you know, because we're fighting the good fight. And it's like, sign up for our newsletter. And it's like, cool, bro. Like, we're just doing all these things, like, and we're really not getting anywhere, you know? In Texas, they've taken their gun rights for granted. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm sorry. But you have. If you're in Texas, you guys have had that freedom for so long that you don't even know how to utilize it properly. And in California, they don't have that problem because their 2A is at risk every day.
So that, yeah.
And here, as Americans in general, our rights are at risk every day, yet you guys don't want to do anything about it because, well, it doesn't affect your livelihood just yet, does it? You don't have a cause. It's like those college kids that were protesting on college campuses. They got to a place of protest because they understood that their voice is not being heard, so therefore they need to put on a demonstration. Unfortunately, there's agitators in that, and any mini society has agitators. Here in America, we have how many criminals? Yeah, I mean, we have a lot, right?
Oh yeah,
because those are our agitators. Our societal agitators are criminals. So you're gonna naturally have criminal or agitators for any kind of little movement, but nobody supported that cause. Why? Because it was pro-Palestine. But what if it was like pro-food? What if it was pro-water?
Yeah.
What if it was pro-electricity?
yeah,
Right? What if it was pro-medicine?
yeah.
Wouldn't we want to join that?
Mm-hmm.
No, but like these kids were not just there for Palestine. They were exercising their freedom of speech, their freedom of assembly, their freedom of protest. But yet Americans who have taken their rights for granted for so long, were so quick to say, look at those terrorists, look at those Hamas sympathizers, look at you, they should be arrested. They turned on those kids so quickly. That's so sad, dude. If you're listening and you're one of these people that thought those kids should be arrested, shame on you.
I think, Kawa, with that right there,
arrest the agitators.
yeah.
Arrest the agitators.
That's my point.
But
So-
if you just arrest the agitators, separate the bad apples from the good ones, leave the
apples,
good
you'll
apples
see the
alone,
real
you wouldn't
reason.
have the graffiti, you wouldn't have the broken windows, you wouldn't have the flipped cars or whatever, but you would still have the peaceful element there.
So, and I said this, the kids that were tearing down American flags, burning them, and then the funny one was the pride flag with the Hamas like thing. I was like, bro, that
Some creativity.
I'm like, buddy, Hamas would fuck you up for that. Like, like
Hamas is like, hey, you figured this out.
Like, what the fuck?
How did you know?
Yeah.
We
Fuck.
love you guys.
Yeah. So it's like, holy shit. But it's kind of like, even when you go, look, the kids that were being fuckers and terrible and taking away from what people were actually trying to achieve, in my eyes, yeah, fuck those guys.
Well, arrest
Take
them
to
for their
jails.
crimes.
Yeah, for their
but
crimes.
did they commit a crime? Arrest them for their crimes.
Correct.
Can you arrest somebody for burning a flag, American flag? No, you can't.
You can't.
You can't. Now,
And that's their freedom, yeah.
if they pick up your flag, that's your property. They burn it.
Then
Then
it's
yeah,
different.
you can
Yeah.
press charges.
Correct.
So press charges on the kids that were doing it, but leave the rest alone. But that's not what happened, is it,
But
Chris? What happened was a blanket statement. What happened was a blanket memo went out, and they said anybody who's pro-Palestine must be pro-Hamas. Therefore, kick them all off.
Correct.
Again, we turn, and then obviously local authorities do that. But I hear all these Americans cheering it on. Yeah, get those pro-Hamas people out of there. Like, bro, those are literally your kids, your boys and your girls.
Yeah.
Those are your sons and daughters, and you're turning your backs on them because a couple of them were assholes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. If you want to live by that logic, then if you want to do the mass punishment approach, then just remember that's a slippery slope, and that's going to be used on you next time.
Yeah, it goes a lot of ways, like even the BLM movement, right? Everybody's like, like Black Lives Matter, and but there was the people who were causing havoc and destruction and tarnishing the movement of people that were trying to get recognition to the Black folks was a lot of little spoiled white kids that were burning shit and doing crazy stuff. And I'm like, they're taking away from the people who are actually trying to get a
100%.
message out,
Yeah.
And look, I'm going to tell you one thing right now. I was a police officer, and when people sit here like back to blue and stuff like that, I'm the biggest supporter and non-supporter of law enforcement because I got fucked over by my old department.
That's how I feel about the military.
Yeah, exactly.
The biggest supporter and non-supporter.
And it's funny because people will sit there and be like, "Oh, you don't support cops." It's not, and I'm not saying that I don't support cops. What I'm saying is I don't support the scum that are in that world, right? Because I mean, my life almost was fucking taken from me because of pieces of shit like that, and I've seen it firsthand, profiling on the streets. And right now, I can sit here and I can look at this camera and we could make a freaking reel about it and share it because I will call that guy out. I remember he tells me one day, and there's other fellow officers that I still talk to that remember this day. I said, why do you have these? Because he called for backup. I said, why do you have these 6 guys on the ground with their hands over their head? And then the guy that's in the car, you have him in handcuffs leaning against his own car. And he goes, they were doing a drug deal. I go, really? Why? He goes, that guy shook his hand. When he walked up to him, car shook his hand, and then he walked back. I go, so they did a drug deal? Like, that's grounds for a drug deal there? He's like, yeah. Suspicious. I said, why? Because there's 6 black people? He says, yeah. And I go, so it's a drug deal because they're black and there's 6 of them. Yeah. And he shook his hand and he's like, I bet you there's drugs on him. Oh. And this man was so mad. He literally said, I shook my son's hand and I gave him $20 because they're working on that car right there in that house. And they just told me that they're going to go get some pizza. And I go, okay. And I said, I get it. You're frustrated with us and stuff. I said, let me try to figure this out. And we start going through the whole thing. And there was no drugs. The only person that had drugs was the mom that was in the passenger seat. She had a joint. And honestly, at that point, it was like, I crushed it and said, have a merry day, because it wasn't legal at that time yet over there. And it pissed me the fuck off, man, because, you know, I had already been in the military and stuff, and I got to see that, and I'm like, you're the reason why cops get looked at and like, you pieces of shit, you Nazis, you this, that, the other. And again, we go back to this Hamas thing, right? I don't support Hamas. I don't.
Nobody really does.
Yeah, I don't support Taliban. I don't support any of those guys. Yeah,
I support the principle of what they're doing. Now, people will take that
people won't understand that, right?
Yeah, but this is why we're about to explain it. But before I even get to that, let's talk about like where Hamas came from. Okay, because we were kind of like on this little tale of Israel, right? And so once they become weaponized by the UK and the US, they start to continue doing what they're doing. They are taking land, they're pushing people out, they're killing people, and they're growing Israeli territory. That's again, if you look at a chronological map of Israel-Palestine, it's very much Palestine in the beginning, but then it slowly turns into Israel over time.
Hey guys, today's episode is sponsored by Double Tap Concealment, where precision engineering meets personal defense. From a humble workshop to a trusted worldwide brand, Double Tap Concealment was built on a mission to create holsters that uphold the highest standards in security, comfort, and style. At Double Tap, expert artisans and firearms specialists work together to craft holsters that embody both sophistication and reliability. Each holster combines innovative design with flawless functionality, crafted to support and enhance your everyday lifestyle. When you choose Double Tap, you're embracing a standard of protection that respects your right to self-defense and commitment to quality. Guys, check them out. Double Tap Concealment. Amazing dudes, fast shipping, great products. I'm not just saying this because they sponsored this podcast. I promise you, really good holsters. I currently just added one of their holsters to my actual kit. Check them out, guys. Double Tap Concealment.
Even after the 1967 border treaty, where lines were drawn by the UN and everybody agreed on it, the US, the UK, everybody agreed on it. Israel agreed on it. Even Palestinian, the PLA agreed on it, the Palestinian Liberation or PLO, organization. And like the lines were drawn. Now, if Israel had just stuck to that 1967 border treaty and with the lines drawn and not encroached past that, you wouldn't have Hamas today. This was 1967 that treaty was signed. But then they continued doing that, and they still do it now. So then they continued, and they broke UN resolution after UN resolution. I mean, they've broken over 120 UN resolutions at this point. Netanyahu is a war criminal by definition. The UN wants to prosecute, but there's powers that be that won't let them, like America vetoing that every time.
Yeah.
But then, so something has to be born out of this. Again, when you are trying to exterminate something, or you're trying to kill something off or chase it off, give it an exit strategy, right? Because when you corner it and nobody else is coming to its rescue, it's going to have to fight for itself at some point. In the case of Palestine, when all the other countries, all the other Middle Eastern countries turn their back on this place because, well, Israel or America does a deal with them that now says, hey, by the way, you can't get involved in that. We'll do this oil deal with you. We'll do this weapons deal with you. We'll do this whatever equipment deal with you. But one of the conditions is whatever happens in Palestine, none of you Middle Eastern countries can get involved. It's like the whole thing. Swear allegiance to Israel or you're not going to be a career politician. And so they have to sign off on it. And so everyone has bastardized Palestine. No one will come to Palestine's rescue. Who's left? The people. So then from 1967 to 87 or 85 when Hamas came about, just think 15 to 20 years of this happening could probably raise some people into like, dude, this is enough, man. I was a little boy when this was supposed to end in 1967. 20 years later, I'm a grown man and I'm tired. Nobody else is coming to our rescue. We have to fight for ourselves. Okay, so then now a resistance is born. Because when you oppress people and you kill them and you enslave them and you occupy them for decades and decades and decades, there is a lot of resentment and hate that comes out of that. When little kids see their fathers die by the very people that live just next to them, would you not grow up with that hate and resentment in your heart?
Yeah, that's what we're saying right now.
Because people will say, well, Palestinians teach their kids hate. Why do you need to teach a Palestinian kid hate when by the age of 6, he's seen more death and destruction than you will ever see in your entire lifetime? Who needs to teach that kid hate? Who's teaching them to hate is Israel by constantly killing their fathers and their family members. Trust me, dude, I'm with you. If I grew up in Palestine, I'll let everybody know right now. If I grew up in Palestine and I saw my mother or my sister or somebody else die in front of me, bro, I would be Hamas too. So then from that, a resistance is born. You have to fight your aggressors somehow. You have to fight an occupying force somehow. The resistance is born, and now the resistance has to find a way to fight back. And they don't have precision laser guided missiles.
No. And that's where we as Americans who are misinformed are looking at all of them as evil people. Yeah, I'm not saying that Hamas is perfect.
You have to,
there's bad guys in there.
But you have to call them evil. Yeah. Otherwise, how does it work?
It doesn't work.
You can't even call them a resistance. Yeah. America will never call Hamas a resistance.
Well, I mean, look, for example, we talked about this.
Yeah, you have to villainize them.
In Afghanistan, you have the Taliban, you have the resistance as well. Remember, we joined the resistance to help them when we were going after the Taliban. And it's funny because I had another Green Beret on this show.
Yeah.
And we talked about it. And at one point of his, time in Afghanistan, he was fighting alongside Taliban members to go after ISIS. Together. They're fighting. You guys been fighting the Taliban there the whole time. Yeah. And then all of a sudden now you're with them, helping each other to go after these other guys, which the Taliban is also another creation of our own mess.
That's right.
But now the resistance is trying to come to us and tell us that there's something coming to the United States and giving us this fair warning. And now we're classifying the resistance as a terrorist organization because they no longer meet the goals and the views that we have. Isn't that fucked up?
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's in order to understand the solution so everything's an objective, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And in order to understand how to achieve your objective is understand the conditions of this location and like the demographic of the people. Once you understand that, now you know how to chip away at that. And then you learn how to create an enemy based on what your objective is. So in Afghanistan, we created the Taliban as a mediator group to go into Afghanistan and bring the warlords together. But everybody forgets that Afghanistan has always been very tribal. Nobody in Afghanistan accepted Karzai. Nobody in Afghanistan accepted Dr. Abdullah. They are very tribal people. So instead of just leaving Afghanistan alone so that these tribes can figure it out amongst themselves like they always have, America was like, you know what? Let's get involved in this. Because there's some money to be made here. So let's create a mediator group called the Taliban. Hey, go in there and tell all these warlords to reunite and bring your country back together. When in reality, we knew that they would go there and join sides because, again, Afghans are tribal. Mm-hmm. there's no unification there. There's only unification when there's another enemy in, like, all the way from Alexander the Great to America. When there is a foreign enemy, that's when they unite. But until then, they fight themselves. But that was the plan. Send the Taliban in there. Then these Taliban pick sides. Then you have the actual Taliban. But then a resistance forms, which is the Northern Alliance, Ahmad Shah Massoud's people. And then when we go to Afghanistan, we say, "Whoa, the Taliban are bad guys, and we have to join the Northern Alliance." So in essence, we created an enemy because we had an objective. We knew how to create that enemy based off of the demographic and history of that region. And then we joined the resistance to now fight the enemy. That's all Afghanistan ever was. If you wanted bin Laden, guess what, bro? There's a couple of guys inside of a compound in North Carolina that can know how to get people very well. That's literally all they do. And these guys are very well equipped, and they have the best training in the world. And they could have went in there and got bin Laden way early on. But then what are we still doing in this country now?
We do it in Mexico too. You know how long we could have gotten Chapo Guzman?
Oh.
We have allowed that to run. That's my cup of tea. I know a lot of history on that because I've researched that.
But I bet
so
you
much.
It's the same formula.
It's the exact same way. And that's why I get it.
And the formula is the same in Israel-Palestine because, again, Israel needs Hamas. Because right now the world's like, well, guys, Hamas is trying to kill them. So, like, you know, I know it's a lot that they're killing children and killing all these innocent people, but, you know, they are trying to, Israel is an ally of ours and we should support them. It's like, that is just the surface level, you know, kind of like narrative, you know, but if you dig into it, you understand that Israel very much is not our ally in any form or sense. They have drawn us into so many wars. They, like I said, Netanyahu stood before Congress and convinced Congress to go after Saddam because it would make the region safer. Has it?
It's made it worse.
Is the region of Iraq any safer now than it was before we went in there? But
I don't think Tiesto goes back to Iraq anymore.
But did Israel and Netanyahu achieve their objective of dividing Iraq in the Middle East and causing further tension?
And it goes back to look what's happening to us here in our own turf.
So the formula is pretty much the same, guys. They will always their objective is only achieved by creating enemies or creating what we are told are enemies, and then they will say, "Well, this is the solution. This is the solution. We have to go in there and we have to do military action and whatever to get the enemy." Hamas, what then? If Hamas is why Israel keeps attacking Gaza and parts of West Bank, even though they said there's no Hamas in West Bank, but in the West Bank they're still killing Palestinians. I don't know why. Maybe it's because they want to kill them all. But like, if they do that, then what were they doing before Hamas? Because Hamas was only around since 1985 or 87. Why were they killing Palestinians before that? What was the resistance? What was the terrorist group back then? The PLO? Okay, the PLO only goes back to the 60s. Then why were they killing people since in the 50s? Why were they killing people? You know, like, so again, when you reverse engineer this region, you understand that Israel from day one has always been the aggressors, always been the occupiers, always been the terrorist organization. And they have perfected the formula for how to do this because they have the supporting mechanisms in place here in America. If America stopped supporting Israel for even, let's say, 6 months, Israel would go broke and they would not have enough weapons to last them. They would be just a duck in the water. And they're very much afraid of that. So they had to secure secure their entity of Israel by leeching themselves onto a bigger organization that's established, that has money, and also that you can use religion to tie into. Mm-hmm. Because listen, if you're a true Christian, then you should support the Jews. Yeah. But did the Jews support Jesus? Did the Jews support Christians? Mm-hmm. Do Christians get a fair treatment in Israel even now? Because I can show you videos of Israeli settlers that will spit in your face if you are a Christian. You know, they'll curse your mother, and they'll curse Jesus Christ, and they'll call Mary a whore. They'll do everything because they don't truly support Christianity. Judaism doesn't support Christianity. I'm sorry. It came way before Christianity. we have to support Judaism because, well, as a Zionist, what's the oldest religion in history that goes back to the Abrahamic religions? It's Judaism. That's how they tie into Christianity, therefore demonizing Islam.
Yeah. I think that's for me why I've had a few experiences within the church and stuff that have led me to say, I don't believe, not that I don't believe in religion, but I don't support it nowadays. It's been so tampered with by mankind that it's not authentic, right? It's not. And I mean, when you're worried about how big your Starbucks is inside of your church, like you're not there for the right reasons, right?
Yeah, true.
And that's where the misleading starts.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
well, it's just it's the whole, like, as Christians, we have to support Israel because the Bible says so.
well, they talk about these humble beginnings, and some of these pastors are driving around fucking like Ferraris and stuff like that. You're like, whoa, dude, weren't you like working at UPS before this? Like, and I'm not saying all of them are bad. No, I'm not. But I'm saying there's
very commercialized.
Exactly. And it sucks, man, because look, like, and for my viewers and I would like for everybody to understand this, because I'm sure we're gonna get shit. Oh, there's
That's fine. I welcome it.
Pro Hamas sympathizers or something like that. Look, I'm gonna tell you right now, any fucking terrorist, fuck off. I don't like them.
Yeah.
Right.
But we also have to understand, like, what is terrorism?
Correct.
Okay.
I think not a lot of people understand.
If we took terrorism by definition and we were like, well, who can we all apply this to in the world? Bro, guess what? We better start with ourselves.
I know.
Did we not terrorize Iraq for 20 years and found 0 weapons of mass destruction? Did we not terrorize Afghanistan for 20 years and only to do what? Because we had bin Laden a while back, but for what?
You have opiates,
right? So it's like I mean, it's like you have to like look a little bit deeper, guys. Like, this is not just about American patriotism and terrorism. Yeah. Guess what? The early Americans that fought the British, guess what they were called back in Europe? Terrorists. Did you know that? We call them heroes. We call them revolutionaries. But they were called terrorists back in Europe. Yeah. In the UK and Great Britain. They didn't call us Americans. They didn't call us like, oh, no, they're terrorists out there killing our British soldiers. So we were also terrorists, because that word is so easy to apply.
It's very easy. Yeah.
The kids that are protesting on college campuses are also terrorists. Guess what? We're also terrorists, right? Hamas are terrorists, but Israel is even bigger terrorists. So what the fuck is terrorism about anyway? Right? So like really break it down to principle and say, well, who is the occupying force? Who's the aggressor? Who keeps agitating? Who keeps pushing the needle forward? And then who is the underdog? And now you at least have 2 parties that you can research. The underdog usually is an underdog for a reason. Is because they don't necessarily want things the way that it is, and their lives are probably not to the standards that they want to live them. That's why they're the underdog. And when you have an oppressor for 80 years, a resistance gets born out of that. But then as the oppressor and its allies, you have to label that the resistance force as terrorists. You have to. And it doesn't matter if they kill innocent Israelis or not. You have to name them terrorists, because otherwise the world will start to question your motives. Say, wait a minute, if they're not terrorists, they're just a resistance, then why are they resisting? What are they resisting? But if you say terrorists, like, oh yeah, we better stay away from those guys. They're terrorists, bro. Like, don't even advocate for Palestine. So that's where it's really dumb.
I think for me, Kawa, the big thing that I get mad about with some of that stuff, especially these groups, is don't go after the people. Like, don't go after the...
But we went after people, Chris.
I know. And
what gives us any right to kill Afghans because we're military and these guys are not?
Yeah. No, and I think that's why...
I'm trying to get people to think outside the box here.
And this is why this is necessary. Yeah. Because it's one of those where I hate to see civilians dying. I do. It's fucking awful.
Yeah. We killed over 2 million Afghans and Iraqis.
And we've left a lot of them to die there now too, because we've allowed a very corrupted system to keep our intelligence system of vetting these people. And now they know who went and helped us. Mm-hmm. And now they're just fucking left there to get slaughtered. You know what I mean? And that's fucked up, because today still there's Afghans getting killed by shitty people that are in Afghan that are killing innocent civilians in Afghanistan who wanted to support us and help us because they thought they were going to hopefully get somewhere. And now they're just sitting ducks over there dying. When I saw people jumping off the plane, that shit hurt me, man. It hurt me because, Abbey Gate sucked. The Marines getting killed and stuff. Fuck yeah, that all bothered me a lot. But to see those people, and when I see Americans crying about the most littlest things, but I see people fighting for their lives to hang on to a wheel of a C-130 because they want to get out of freaking Afghanistan because they're scared of what they know is going to happen to them.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But then we're not bad people.
No, so that's why I'm saying, like, we got to do away with this word terrorism, bro. Because like, everyone's a terrorist these days. Just because I wore an American flag on my right shoulder does not make me a terrorist, right? Like, we went under the guise of the military, but yet we killed so many innocent people. Are we not terrorists by definition? Yeah. Not only did we kill people, we disrupted their entire way of life. That is by definition terrorism. And so, but here's the thing. America fears the Middle East because we're like, oh man, all those guys want to kill us. Why do all these people in the Middle East want to kill Americans? And they don't get past that. They can't, again, break these questions down to principle. Maybe they want to kill us. Maybe they want to attack us. Maybe they hate us in the first place due to just the association to Israel, giving them the 15 to 20 billion a year, giving them all the equipment, allowing them to continue to kill Palestinians, now bomb South Lebanon, also attack Yemen and do all these and attack other places. And so, of course, that's open source. We weren't sneaky enough with that. And so the world knows that America supports Israel and Israel does all this chaos in the region. Therefore, the entire Muslim world probably doesn't like America. So at this point, if they want to harm us, guess what? They are terrorists. Al-Qaeda are terrorists. ISIS, Taliban, Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, Boko Haram, they're all terrorists. But it's only because we made them terrorists. We fucked around in their countries for so long that they got tired of it. And when their own militaries and governments didn't help, they stood up.
Well, the funny thing is a lot of Americans don't understand that many of these organizations were funded by us.
Yeah, I mean, we created ISIS, literally created ISIS. We literally created Al-Qaeda. We literally created the Taliban, and so, but we needed them because you can't justify military action if you don't have an enemy. And you can't have an enemy if you don't put the proper conditions in place for that seed to grow into an enemy. And you have to do that by setting the battlefield. And here in America, the battlefield is, sex gender transition and sex education in school and, name it, right? We're so divided. Yeah, it's the same thing because if they really wanted to, they can bring America to a point where we become a third world country because it starts with so much violence in the streets that the law enforcement are overnumbered and overpowered. So the National Guard has to come in. So in order for the National Guard to come in that manner, there has to be martial law declared. So imagine you have martial law declared in these towns and these cities. And naturally, when martial law gets declared, the military power and the use of the authorization of military use in America under the martial law exponentially grows. I mean, we're talking about curfews. We're talking about they can come to your house and take your guns. We're talking about they can tell you when to drive and when you can't drive, when to go to work and when not to go to work, when you can go through this exit checkpoint and when you can't. Basically, we're going to turn into Gaza, right? Because that's how those people live every day.
Yeah.
Checkpoints, curfews, no guns allowed, and don't talk back. That's what it's going to turn into. So we can very well get to a place where martial law gets declared, but then Americans are like, I'm tired of these curfews. I'm tired of you guys taking my guns. I'm tired of you giving me government cheese and telling me what to do and what I can't say. And I'm tired of you for punishing me because I posted something on social media. Eventually, Americans will rise up. And guess what our government's going to label them? Terrorists.
Yeah.
And now, so as Americans, do we say these are terrorists and we turn on these people? Or do we join them?
Yeah.
Right? It's the same thing for Hamas. The formula is always the same, guys. That is the formula here. They will label us terrorists. Do they not label... did they not try to label conservatives as white supremacists?
Well, they did that
racists,
with
extremists.
Robert E. Lee. When you go back to the foundations of the Civil War, everybody's like, Robert E. Lee was this radical. They think he's this radical white man that owned slaves and he was racist. Well, nobody looks at the history that Robert E. Lee was part of the U.S. military, a very decorated officer in the military.
Oh, yeah.
and he stood against the government and said, I'm not going to fight against my fellow Virginians and my fellow people, and I'm going to lead them against the battle against you. How come nobody's sitting there and saying that the other side also owned slaves? Because remember, it was only the South that owned slaves.
Mm-hmm.
What about the North? What about the Union, right?
Right.
Abe Lincoln didn't have slaves?
No, they all had slaves.
They all did. So, and supposedly that's what they're fighting about, racism and stuff. So now people have this conception that Robert E. Lee is this racist white man. But when you look at, and we recently took a trip up that way, and I showed, they call it the Arlington House now or whatever, but it was Robert E. Lee's home over in Virginia, or in the Arlington Memorial.
Yeah.
And I told my kid, that's the Robert E. Lee house. And my other kid's like, what is it? Doesn't it say like, the Arlington Memorial home or something like that?
Yeah.
I go, no. I said, that was his house. But since he stood up against the government and fought against them, they confiscated it from him and they labeled him as a radical. Mm. And then everybody who was associated with that cause is now a radical.
Also a radical.
Yeah. So
and a radical is synonymous with terrorism. Terrorist.
Yeah. So it goes back to that, right?
Right.
But of course, I'll get shit from some of my own friends now for like having this discussion with you. But I don't care.
Send them my way. I love enlightening people
because it's something that we need to start educating ourselves as Americans.
100%.
Because even in the military, right? Some of us have not opened our eyes completely to see the whole view of things.
You would think after serving 20 years in a country or in a region that you would be very familiar with their cultures, their customs, their traditions, and their religion, and therefore also understanding that these people are, for the most part, peaceful people until you now do what you do. It blows my mind that still people in the military that I served with, Green Berets, in fact, still would like look at Muslims as like, oh, we should just kill them all.
Yeah,
I was told that. In fact, I met somebody at my last couple of months at group. I met somebody that was coming in, and he was like good friends with my NCOIC, the guy in charge. And so he was like, "Oh yeah, dude, fucking, we should just kill all these Muslims. Just wipe them all off." He's talking about 1.8 billion people, by the way, 3.5 million people here in America. He wants to wipe them all off. And then my buddy, who's the NCOIC, is like, "Hey, like, don't say that, bro. Kawa's Muslim." And I overheard him. And I didn't wait for him to come over to me and apologize. I stood up and I was like, "Hey, bro, like, I'm Muslim. You want to kill me?" I was like, "I'm also a Green Beret. I'm also an American citizen. I've also served the military for maybe just as long as you have, if not longer, but I'm Muslim. So do you want to kill me or not? I'm just asking." And like, he didn't know what to say. And so it blows my mind that people that I've served with that still look at Muslims this way. And man, their minds don't have the mental acuity to comprehend anything below a surface level thought.
There's guys like, for example, Eddie Gallagher. That whole story. The Navy fucking steamrolled that dude and was trying to end him and stuff like that. And that's just an example that the people that you think you're serving or serving with and this cause that you're behind doesn't give a fuck about you. Yeah. Look at that guy. He did his whole, whether what he did was, I don't know the whole story and the whole context to it, but the way they, came after him and stuff like that just shows you the military doesn't give a fuck about you. No. You're just another pawn to the game, man.
They don't care about you, man. That's why they don't check on you after you get out. They just want you to check the boxes. And then you'll be out of the military with no plan, and then you'll be homeless in 3 months, and nobody checks on you because nobody gives a shit about our veterans in this country.
I had a really good conversation with somebody in California the other day, and he's very far left. Told me he used to go and protest and all that stuff.
Yeah.
We had such a good conversation because we were understanding each other and actually not looking at each other as enemies, right? We were looking at each other as American citizens who want to find middle ground into our problems. And he was telling me something that actually really sparked something in my head. And on this podcast, I like to cover mental health and everything as well, too. And I have. And he told me, he's like, in a lot of tribal, things like where, in the back in the days of the Native Americans and stuff like that, these guys would go see war or they'd go fight another tribe or whatever. And they would go through this cleansing process before they were able to go and reintegrate within their tribe, within the women and the children and stuff like that. And he says, how the fuck does our country not do that for our veterans? And I go, elaborate on that. He goes, you guys come back home from war and all this crazy stuff, and you're expected to go right back into society like nothing ever happened. And then you get labeled as a psychotic piece of shit that lost his shit and is weak because he
PTSD.
couldn't handle war. And you know, he goes, why can't we? And he talked about like psychedelic treatments and stuff like that. And I was like, man, that's a really good point there, man. Like that makes sense. And let's face it, how many military members truly get a process when they come back from a deployment and get cleansed and helped before they reintegrate? None.
They don't. They just get some time off.
That's it.
That's it. You just give them some time off. They don't get anything. You have to ask for help. But here's the thing: when you ask for help, then they automatically judge you.
Mhm.
And like in the special forces, you work so hard to get to that ODA, man. You work so hard to earn that Green Beret. You know, you're busting your butt for like 2 years, you know, competing with other guys, and then you finally make it. And let's say you go to Afghanistan, you go somewhere, you deploy, you see some fucked up shit. You come back, you can't sleep, you can't, you know, you can't talk to anybody because they say don't talk to your wives about this stuff. So there is no healthy outlet for this, and not verbally, and you really don't have anybody to talk to. But then you're feeling the pressures of it. And let's say, you know, you're like, you go to the doc and you go to your medic and you're saying, bro, I can't sleep. Like, you know, he's like, cool, bro, we'll hook you up with some meds, help you sleep, you know, some melatonin or some Valium. And then, or maybe it's like, dude, I'm so tired during the day. And he's like, bro, here's some pick me ups, you know, here's some whatever, you know, help you out. And they dish out, you know, prescription medicine like candy. But if you were to raise your hand in special forces and say, I'm fucked up, I need help, more than likely, and this may get me in trouble, more than likely, all they're going to do is they're going to take you off that team, either put you on the B team or give you a desk job down in the battalion for about 6 months to a year, where hopefully they try to help you out. But then you're going to also be doing this admin job. Now, most people will be like, you know, maybe that guy needs that. Maybe he needs like a little desk job. Well, we didn't become Green Berets to like become desk jockeys. We did not bust our butts for 2 years to make it to this varsity level of operating, only to now, when I raise my hand for help, you're going to bench me. Why would I raise my hand for help then?
It's the same way.
You know,
I'm not trying to compare.
I'm just going to keep going until I burn out, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you're not in that level of movement that you're used to. For example, and I'm not trying to compare anybody in the military to a dog.
Yeah.
But what happens to military working dogs when they're done?
They get retired, right?
Yeah, and for a long time they used to euthanize a lot of them because, dude, those dogs come back with emotional distress also.
Oh yeah,
you know, and then you can't give that dog now and say, here, have him as a family pup.
Yeah,
something bad might happen, right?
Right.
So for the longest time, they didn't know what to do with these dogs, and they were just kind of like, when you bench the dog from doing all that work that he used to do,
yeah.
And then you now expect him to go be this fuzzy little hairball.
Yeah.
He's out of his element.
Yeah, man.
That,
like,
you know, you when you've trained a specific type of movement for such a long time, that has become secondary to you.
Your mind is conditioned to that.
Exactly.
When your mind is conditioned to something, your body naturally follows.
Exactly.
So if you are the thrill seeker, guess what? You're going to be jumping out of airplanes and doing all this crazy stuff where you could get killed.
And then they wonder why people are offing themselves when they're back in the civilian.
Well, and the whole suicide thing in the military is very easily solvable. Like, first of all, stop handing out prescription drugs like they're candy. And second, put together some like AA style like groups where guys can just come in and talk to each other. No psychologists, no like professional, no therapists. Just let these guys come in and just sit around a table and talk.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You want to share a story, bro? I'm here. I've been there, done that too. Like, you're good in this circle. You're safe.
Yeah.
Get it off your chest.
It's understood.
But that's not the solution. The solution is give them drugs, keep them busy, keep them deployed, keep them to schools, you know, and then they'll be fine. It'll just balance out. Well, until one morning they don't show up, because on top of the prescription drugs that they were taking, they're also drinking a ton of alcohol at home. And like, these two chemical imworst
counter each other, and then
they counter each other. And now, if it's not something like domestic abuse or yelling at your kids, it could be the worst case scenario of you know, killing yourself somehow. Because I've known 5 people in the time that I was a 5th group that killed themselves, and 3 of those guys were like really good friends. And one of those guys was just always happy all the time, made people laugh all the time. And then one morning he doesn't show up. We're also just good actors. Like, you know, we can fake our sadness. We can fake our depression. We can fake all of that because we were taught to. Because if you're getting scared in combat, bro, you better fucking fake the funk till you get back to the base and then let it out there. We don't have time for you to break down. No. So then you get very good at suppressing that and hiding it. And when you come home, you also continue to do that method.
Think about how many vets struggle to go through the VA system because they're like, well, that's not service connected because it's not on paper. Well, we were also, and you were in the Marine Corps. What are you taught? To not be a fucking pussy and to man up.
100%.
If your shit's fucked up, if you can still move, keep moving, motherfucker. Don't go to sick call.
That's it.
You go with the corpsman, you're a pussy. Remember the guys who used to make fun of the silver bullet because they'd pass out and stuff?
Yeah.
You know, and it's like it was a culture where we would make fun of each other or demoralize the other person for not. So now, like, my nephew,
you're just a malingerer, bro.
Yeah,
you're just
a malingerer.
You're just a skater,
remember
bro.
the random like charge they would say you would get for malingering or whatever. Yeah. But it's funny because
that dude's a skater.
Yeah, exactly, a fucking skater, man. And you know, I tell my nephew now who's in the Marine Corps, I was like, dude, if you get hurt, I don't care if they call you a pussy. You go take care of yourself. So when you get out of the military, you get the things that you. Yeah, exactly, man. And it's a thing. But you know, Kawa, I really appreciate you coming on and enlightening that topic because, like I said, I know we're gonna get shit, and you know I'm okay with it because you know what giving me shit means. It also means you going and channeling into my shit and giving me a view. I don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? But we need to start creating that culture where we shouldn't be oppressed on what we should say, what we feel like saying. Now, maybe he doesn't agree with what I have to say, or I don't agree with what you have to say. Doesn't mean that you can go fuck right off and I hate you and now you're my enemy. We need to be open to these kind of things. And
I mean, we can't be liberals. That's the thing. I'm sorry.
There you go.
I'm gonna say it, bro. This is like, we're being real.
It's true.
You can't be a liberal where you're like, oh, you lead everything by emotion. Where if I don't agree with you, you just lose your mind and say, well, I hate you if you don't agree with me.
Look, girls shaving their head now.
You have lost all logical thought and common sense in your brain and body when you come at me that way, and you lose my respect. So if you really want me to kind of, you know, understand your cause and maybe even support it somehow, and talk to me without the emotion. And that's what we see with all these liberal freakout videos because Trump is now in office, is they don't know how else to deal with that, and they can't make logic out of it. Yeah. They can't get to a common sense, like, conclusive thought. You know, so they just naturally hang on to emotions, and they lead with the anger, they lead with the screaming, they lead with the crazy little, like, I'm gonna cut my hair off. And the video I posted today of that white chick where she's like, I'm just gonna buy a Glock, and any white male I see, I may just shoot him. And like, you should watch that video, bro. Like, she's literally saying, I'm going to buy a Glock and kill white males, even though she's white. Yeah. So this is the mindset.
I've been screenshotting the last 3 days, all the things that these people are posting, like on threads and stuff. And I'm like, holy shit.
It's either a chemical imbalance or a psychological imbalance or a combination of the two. And we're talking about mental health. Yeah. This is a perfect example of mental health failing our people.
Oh, in America, we're so underserviced in mental health. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, we can't even help our own vets. Why would we help any of the citizens?
I now do something in the medical field where we deal with the sickest people in the hospital. Yeah. And there's a part where these people stay in the ICU for months at a time, man. And they're sick. They're on machines and everything. And we'll consult for neurology, for this, for that, for everything. And a lot of these places fail to consult for psych, for mental health. Because do you not think that somebody's not going to... ICU delirium is a real thing. You're stuck in a room with machines and all this shit. You're awake, you're conscious. And you're there for months at a time. Do you not think these people are going to be fucked? Not to mention you've been getting pushed fentanyl and propofol and all these things to keep you calm and to make sure that nurse's shift goes well so that the machines aren't making all these noises and stuff. So now we're also creating dependency to your body on medication to keep you calm, which is addictive medication. And then now we expect these people to reintegrate after they get out of the ICU and stuff and be just fine. Dude, this shit fucks people up, and we underservice them.
And also the other common denominator there for most of these liberals is that most of them are on medication.
They are.
Antidepressant, anti-anxiety, bipolar, stuff like that. Yeah. There's so many side effects from those, but also then they have the psychological effect of the mainstream media, the brainwashing, the indoctrination.
Well, they're screwed.
And they have to hang on to something. Otherwise, they feel useless. Mm-hmm. The people that fight so hard for LGBT, it's because without it, they would lose their identity.
Exactly.
They have
nothing. Yeah.
So it's like that's what they have to hang on to. You'll never see them pick up a flag because in their heads, that's like their heads would explode if they picked up a flag and all of a sudden became patriotic. And I'm not saying all liberals are that way, but there's definitely some common denominators and common attributes within liberals that that will explain some
And
things.
in the last 3 days, it's been showing a lot.
And it's been showing. And honestly, we should take every one of them as a case study and be like, what are all the commonalities here? Because there could be a pattern here. There could be some things that we need to address within our society so that our future children don't turn into this. Because these people weren't born this way. They were obviously influenced over time, over mainstream media, over their friends, the whole psychological aspect of it. And then the drugs that they're on are not helping. That's why I'm a huge, I highly disagree with prescription medication.
I'm waiting to see like, oh, this was all just this big giant psyop that somebody ran on us. Like, fuck, man.
And like, I know that, and let me just elaborate on the prescription drugs, because I feel like there are definitely some conditions where prescription drugs help you, and like older people need some prescription drugs, you know, for cholesterol and shit like that. But I feel like young people, you don't need prescription drugs to cure your depression, your anxiety, your whatever. You don't, man. You're too young. Your brain is still very much able to handle that and come to a solution for that over time. But the problem is the supporting mechanisms are not in place for these kids to get that kind of help.
Correct.
Again, so from a very young age, their parents are like, well, my kid's acting up like every day at school and he's always getting in trouble. Okay, well, maybe we should give him some of this medicine to calm him down. Maybe we should give him some of this medicine because, you know, he's a little too lethargic. Like, it's just like, we're just pumping our kids with medicine because we have access to it. Like, we're doing it to ourselves, man. That's why I say that, you know, people are like, Donald Trump is, you know, like liberals will be like, Donald Trump is like the biggest problem in this country. And he's going to bro, the biggest problem in this country is Americans themselves. It's not the people, enemy, man. It's not the people that we elect.
We're our own enemy.
We are eating our own because we cannot apply common sense and logic to things, but we're also very lazy at researching. So instead of research, we make like a cool little meme. And then I'll post that meme and you'll be like, oh shit, that was funny. But wait a minute. Memes also have some truth behind them. And like, then you're like, you know what I mean? Like that's the psychological aspect of it. And so we have a huge problem in America. And guess what? None of it is a politician.
No,
it's ourselves. Again, we have become the FUDs of that, you know, of our rights, because but what happens like when the first day is actually taken away? Like, could you imagine? Have you guys ever just theoretically, like, what if tomorrow, if it wasn't Trump, it was Kamala, and let's just say somehow she struck the 1A away, or she retweeted in a way where it's so restricted that now if you go outside that narrow lane, you're in trouble somehow. What would happen then? You think Americans would rise up and protest because they don't have a voice anymore? Or would you have all these liberals that are like on board with that and say, well, if you're trying to now change it back, you're a terrorist, you're an extremist, and you're this and you're that.
It goes back to the same formula.
Same formula.
Yeah.
The formula is always the same in the world, whether it's here in America, in Palestine, or anywhere else. The formula is always the same. Understand what your objective is. Understand the demographic of people that you're working with. Find the deficiencies within the society, and now plot to use that against them and watch it sprout. Just give it time. And eventually those people will turn on each other. And now you can come in and be like, whoa, guys.
Yeah.
As the government, we're going to come in because this is like way out of control now. Let us help you out. These are the programs we put in place, or like, you know, the whole real ID thing that they're trying to, you know, that they passed. Yeah. I mean, name it, right? So there's all these things that they're putting in place that's supposed to be helping us, but it's not. It's just hurting us.
Worse, yeah.
And the biggest problem is that regardless of most of Americans voting for Trump this year, which is great, the truth is most Americans are still very gullible to what their government tells them.
Correct. I agree.
Yeah.
We're still not out of that slump. Definitely not. Well, Kyle, I really appreciate you coming on, man. It's been an honor to have you here and talk about these things.
I appreciate it, dude. I appreciate it. Was an honor to be on here, man. I'm glad that we were able to touch on this subject. This is honestly my first podcast where we were able to kind of touch on Israel, Palestine. There's a lot more there, guys. If you really want to, you know, understand what's happening with Israel, Palestine, I would tell you to start with that docufilm called Tantura. I think it's TANTURA.
Yeah.
It's getting late. It's bedtime.
Yeah.
But Tantura, and I forget where it's at. It might be on Prime or somewhere, but start with that and then work your way forward. But if you're trying to start on October 7th, or if you're trying to start with Hamas,
you're late in the game.
No, you're not late in the game, but you're just never going to understand.
Yeah.
You can't come into the middle of a game you don't understand and then expect to understand. You
Correct.
have to go to the rule book and see how it started and why it is the way it is.
Yeah.
Then you'll have a good understanding or a chance to understand. And that's all. That's really about it. Otherwise, Israel-Palestine, there's no solution there. The only solution is a two-state solution, but there's so many entities that are against that that it's probably never going to happen. However, since October 7th, mainly due to TikTok, but also Twitter, the truth about Israel has come out in waves. Not only the Palestinians filming stuff, and then of course you got people that's like, that's fake, and they fake that, cool. But then it's also the Israeli IDF soldiers that are also posting and documenting the death and destruction of these people.
Yeah.
So the two-state solution is in order, and the momentum for that is gaining. And honestly, once Palestine is recognized as an actual state and protected under the UN, just like Lebanon, did you know 12,000 UN troops deployed to South Lebanon to protect it from Israel?
Mm-hmm.
So then Palestine wouldn't have to need some Hamas if the UN gave Palestine 12,000.
Yeah, exactly. Now, people don't see that though.
So
that's not part of
No, they don't see that because Hamas.
It's not worth seeing
and
that.
Muslims are terrorists, and like they can't get past that because, well, it's easier to be ignorant, isn't it? But anyway, bro, I keep getting back into it, but I appreciate you bringing me on, man. We should do this again sometime in the future.
I think we definitely, now that we got the viewers to know who you are and what you're about, we definitely got to chop it up again soon.
Yeah.
I know you got your company, you do your training and stuff. For the viewers, where can they catch you? Where can they look at your stuff?
Yeah. So the training company is 2 Alpha Training Group that I've owned I started back in 2017. And we are a training and consulting company. We do all kinds of firearms training and tactics training. We have open enrollment curriculum, but we also have curriculum that's a little more specialized to SWAT units and other agencies and stuff like that. But the website is 2alphatraininggroup.com. Right now it's under construction. You'll be able to go on there and see things, but you won't see anything populated and you won't be able to check out. So you can go check it out, but it's going to get revamped, and hopefully we're going to get it up before Thanksgiving. Then plenty of courses for 2025 will be on there as well. And then consulting-wise, we consult for weapons companies and weapons component companies and night vision, thermals. We do a lot of consulting for them, which just means I get to play with a lot of cool stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And
you do have some pretty cool shit.
And that's fun. And that's fun because then there has to be some fun in there, right? If it feels like work, then I'm done. I'm done with it. But that's the training and consulting company. And again, check us out on 2alphatraininggroup.com. Give us till Thanksgiving. Otherwise, I'm on Instagram, Kawa_M_official. And then that handle is pretty much, I try to give it continuity across all the platforms like Twitter and TikTok and all of that. So if you just look up Kawa_M_official, you'll find me on most places.
You have a strong following on there too, yes.
And so, hit me up, man. I get a lot of DMs and I try to catch up with them as much as I can, but I entertain this topic. I entertain anything that has to do with America. I entertain firearms, I love debating and I love kind of talking and exchanging ideas because I also learn from my followers, man. There's some smart ass people out there that talk to me about things and I'm like, dude, you just blew my mind, bro.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
But I can't let it consume my day. Otherwise, it's just a lot of travel for training.
Yeah.
I do movies. Yes, I did The Covenant with Guy Ritchie, but I've done so many things prior to that. And in fact, next February after SHOT Show, I may be going to Thailand for 5 to 6 weeks to shoot another film.
Nice.
A Vietnam film with Marines.
Kick ass.
At least that portion of it. So yeah, I love that part. It kind of breaks up the kind of the monotony of my everyday. And plus, it's cool to rub elbows with some celebrities and big directors. Yeah. And it pays well, but it's also Thailand in this case.
Yeah.
Covenant was in Spain for 2 months. I almost bought a house there.
Yeah. I can say, I
almost bought a house in Alicante, bro.
Yeah.
I was like, what, 400,000 for a beach house?
Yeah.
Hold on, let me call my bank.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Well, Kawa, I really appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
It's been an honor.
Thank you.
I'm glad I've been able to bring you on. I'm glad to now have you as a friend here and to be able to consult with you and all kinds of stuff. And I encourage you guys as listeners, man, is even if you don't listen or agree to Kawa or agree with what he has to say, educate yourself. Even educate yourself on what you think is right.
Right. This is not about picking sides, guys. This is about living by your principles.
Exactly.
And when you look at something just through the lens of principles alone, it's easy to understand what's happening, who's who, who's what, and which side we should support.
Mhm.
And that's all I'm going to say. And then, you know, otherwise do what you will. But if you're not going to look at it through principles alone, then you're going to get caught. You're going to get drunk off that Kool-Aid one way or the other.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of drunk conservatives out there.
That's true.
And I don't agree with bandwagon politics.
I don't either. Yeah. No, that's
Yeah.
good, man. Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it. It's been an honor again.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but thanks, man.
Yeah, man. Thank
Appreciate
you for having me.